All right, we're going to get started with this Finance Committee meeting. First thing to do is I need a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting. All right. I need a motion. I didn't move. How about you move?
So moved.
Okay, second. And so that's approved. And I'm going to start with Judge Neff and her staff. And trying to start on time because we have other lawyers here that are on the clock, on the payroll, so we'll move on with that. But Judge, whenever you're ready.
All right, it's Maria and I, everyone remembers Maria from last year, I think, court administrator. And I have to put a disclaimer on this front page PowerPoint. I did not want my photo, but since Maria did it, I was outvoted, and I told her to make it as small as possible, and she didn't quite do that. But
It's very nice.
so here we are, but she did a fine job. Okay, we can go to the next one. Oh, okay. And here's our organizational chart. We tweaked it a little bit from last year, and we will be adding a part-time magistrate for the year 2024. She actually used to be the law director here in the city of Lakewood, Mary Haas McGraw. I don't know if that name rings a bell with everybody. And she's going to be coming aboard 2 days a week, half days, to help with the arraignment docket and the jail. And then you'll note there's a little asterisk down on the right, just to signify that we do have one unfilled full-time position in the clerk's office, and our intention is to fill that for the coming year. All right, so we have been working extremely hard, and I wanted to show you an example of how the cases have increased and the case filings, and I think that's attributed to a couple things. COVID has passed. We have a lot of young, new, aggressive officers who are enforcing things in our city, which is a positive thing. But you'll look in the year 2021, we sampled March. The new cases filed were 426. And then in 22, that same month, it jumps to 503. And then in 23 to 599. So I wanted to look at something more recent. So I checked October of this year. And October of 22, we had 645 new cases. So you can see it even went up from March. And then of this year, we had 771. So that's 126 cases difference. If you multiply that by, a full year, you're looking at 1,500 extra cases plus. So it's a lot to process, and I just kind of wanted to give you an idea of what's coming through. And I think we figured out we're going to have more than over 5,000 cases that have come through the court at the end of the year. Okay, some of our 2023 accomplishments. Maria, you did such a good job with getting the vendor here and that. Do you want to talk about the probation and OCSS?
Sure. So I actually met the gentleman at an Ohio Court Administrators Conference, and his name is Tristan. He was outstanding. Actually, to give you a flavor, the very first part of the conference was for all the vendors to stand at the front, and the way he started his introduction was, hello, most of you might already know me. Can all of you stand that you've had a conversation with me? So everybody had stood that had spoken to him, and you thought, oh, okay, he's a vendor. Everybody had said hello. But then he said, can all of you either, or can you remain standing if you've become a customer of mine? And literally, I think 2 people sat down. And he had an amazing sales pitch, and then obviously, I got talking to him. He met with the judge, and he has an absolutely amazing, it's actually a web-based probation program that now our probation department uses, and it actually links with all of the local municipal courts so that if an individual were on probation, it can link to any, again, local municipality, and they can all talk to each other to know if they're on an ankle monitoring bracelet, if they've already been on probation, if they're currently on probation, if restitution is owed in local courts. So it's a very, again, helpful tool that, again, all of the different courts can speak to each other and monitor.
And one thing I want to add, probation, and I know the finance department knows this they have specialized funds, and they're very restricted. And there's a lot of money in some of them, but we can only spend it on certain ways. So we investigate a little bit how we can maximize that. And so what I've been doing is you can create a journal entry, and it goes to the Adams Board with the county to declare a surplus. Once you have a surplus, then I can use that money to help any individual who needs alcohol or drug treatment. We can use that money to pay for them if they're indigent and they can't afford it. And it doesn't have to be an alcohol offense or an OVI or a drug case, as long as their offense is related to drugs or alcohol. For instance, someone is stealing food to pay for their drug habit. That would be something we could consider to get them treatment. So it's really helped a lot that we're able to use that money, because it was bothering me. It's just sitting there, what do we got to spend it on something. So that, I think, is a real positive thing for our community to be able to utilize those funds. Oh, we hope to work closely with the finance department into next year. We have been having documents in the garage. I don't know if anyone has been in the garage and visited that nightmare. A bunch of court documents are in there. So we have been working to get a lot of those scanned, and it just to make room in the garage, just for other storage things for the city or other departments, and just to clean it out. And it's not safe to have paper documents, a lot of which are confidential, sitting in a garage. So we're working hard to do that, and hope to continue the relationship with the finance department to continue that schedule.
It also, just to jump in, I'm sorry, Judge, but
No.
it also digitizes all the files. They actually take them from us. It's out of, I believe, Akron, but they take the files, they digitize them, they then put them in what's called a docu-queue. And now all of our deputy clerks can access those files through their computers. They just log into this system, and they can, if somebody requests their file, a civil file, they do a public records request for a copy of it, or even if we have to go back and they ask a question about it, it's all in this docu-queue. And again, when they take those files, we can also link in that they destroy them. So they'll take them, we'll go through, we'll double check that the files were actually, we'll like almost spot check per se, but spot check those files to make sure that they're all scanned and in the proper files, and then they'll take them and destroy them. So they don't come back to us, they're officially gone.
And we get a certification from the company that says they did what they did. Let's see. Oh, the training, the NeoGov training, we have decided to make that mandatory for our staff, and they're on schedule. And one, we want to be in compliance with the city and the city employees. And I'm used to having to do trainings from my past, and I just think it's important. So they're doing the online, like the drug-free, the harassment, anything that pertains to the city. So everyone's doing a good job. Maria has her chart of who's hasn't done what, and she reminds them. So that's going really well. And then we updated the magistrate hearing room. We could flip to the next slide. So it honestly looked like someone's living room before. There was wallpaper, and it's hard to see in this light, but the blinds, they were floral and just multicolor. And the thing I want to point out, though, is we didn't have to buy new equipment. We didn't have to spend city dollars. We repurposed what we had. Public Works did an amazing job with the painting, and it just made it more professional, gave it a brighter look. And we'll flip over to the next slide, and you can see it just looks like a whole new room, and we didn't do a lot but paint and move things around. And the television that you see up there, that was in another conference room in the court area, never used. So what we decided to do, and IT helped with that, is we put it up in the hearing room. So this way, it's efficient for hearings for the magistrates. If someone can't appear, they come by Zoom. They can help me with the jail cases. The jail now has a full-screen TV for jail Zoom hearings. So it just really speeds everything up, makes it more efficient, and keeps cases moving. We don't have to continue cases because someone can't make it in. They live in Columbus. and they're a witness in a civil case. So it's worked out really, really great. Next slide. This was the room where the television was that we removed it from. This is the library conference room, and we just cleaned it up. I mean, believe it or not, there were metal files probably from the 1950s that they went from the floor to the ceiling that really, it took up every wall space. We got rid of those, and the old legal books, some of them were from the 1800s. You open it up, they disintegrated. And I checked with the historical, or had someone check with the Historical Society and like Cleveland Marshall, and they weren't interested in everything, so we just cleaned the space up to make it more professional and so people can have meetings in there as well. This is our infamous probation kiosk. So this is where individuals supervised by probation, they come in and they check in at this kiosk screen. And it's a really cool feature. One, it takes their photo. They're able to update their addresses and personal information without having to take the time to write it down, sit down with an individual. And then once they're checked in, it is sent to the probation staff, so they know the individual is here. So they're sitting out in the lobby and probation can come and retrieve them. And what's also really neat about this, not so much the kiosk, but that OCSS system probation has now, we can track, and we specifically ask for this, offenses committed by ward. So that might be something down the line that council may be interested in. If your constituents ask, that's something we will be able to collect. And it's important to me too, because I want to see, especially the people who are coming back, you know, where are they going to? Are they going to the same places? What else do we need to do to prevent them from making these bad choices? So it's a great feature. And I want to point out in October, through the end of October, our active probationers were over 250. And keep in mind, we have one full-time probation officer and one part-time. Okay, and there's a third staff member there, but she more is support, and she oversees restitution and community service. So it's a lot of cases. And one other thing I want to point out about probation, I think the city and council will appreciate this. We recently partnered with, it's a program called RISE, and it stands for, wait, what does it stand for? I'm drawing a blank. No, wait. Rehabilitation instead of sentencing enforcement. And the executive director is Tony Correa, and they really cater to, they make a safe space for the LGBTQ plus community. It's a sober living place. It's right off of West 17th, and it's evidence-based, and they really do a holistic approach. They look at trauma, and they get treatment, and they have licensed social workers and psychologists they work with. So it's a great resource for us, and right now it's free of charge because they're funded by different grants and agencies. So
We have all their information.
What?
We have all their information
Yeah.
in the lobby.
Next slide. Oh, this was the courtroom. The work began. It's little things like the ceiling was painted. You'll see the vents. The ceiling up there, you can't tell in this light, but it looked gray just because from the years of not being cleaned or painted. And it's just such a fresh look, new carpet. And it just, when people come in, it just looks wide and open instead of closed and dark. So it's been really nice to be in there. And that's just the jury box, showing how they had to remove all the jury chairs to put the new carpet in. Clean that up. You can go to the next one. And these are all the benches. So we looked into having these benches refinished because they're really beat up. But the quote we got, it's $2,000 a bench. So it would have been $32,000 to have the benches refinished, and we just thought, we're not going to do that now. We're going to try to come up with another plan. So if any of you know a church closing, please send them our way. We want to get rid of their pews. And we would be remiss not to give a heartfelt and grateful thank you to the Public Works Department. Kurt has been amazing, as well as IT. Mike Coletta, never let that guy get away. He's truly amazing, and they've done wonderful. They've been a wonderful support to us. Okay, on to the 24 goals. I'm going to let you talk about the ARPA.
Sure.
Okay.
So actually, if anyone wants to read that, otherwise if we can go to the next slide, it sort of explains, again, if you remember, we were awarded $425,000 through the OCJS, or the Ohio Department of Public Safety. And with that being said, I've taken the approach of asking, I've spent the money, and then immediately I go and I ask for a reimbursement, so that it's almost a one-for-one with the finance department, so it's almost a cleaner approach. So at the top, you can see personnel. That includes the public defender and their support staff. So the public defender was hired from the public defender's office. He's an assistant. He's great. We've had Chris McMonigal for the last few months. And
He's a
he has,
Lakewood resident, by the way.
yeah, so he comes quickly. And the support staff, he has a woman by the name of Shelley, but she does all of the intake for him. She actually sits in the office that's connected to mine, and it's really been working out well. But I submit to the Ohio Department of Public Safety those timesheets and all of their respective information, and it's approximately between $8,000 and $9,000 for the two of them each month. So to date, and actually right before I came upstairs, we received another $8,000. So now we're up to close to, I think, $75,000 in personnel. And then we've reciprocated with Keith to then reimburse the Public Defender's Office for their service. Then with number 2, the equipment, the 5,800, we received 10 scanners. So each of the deputy clerks now has a scanner on their desk, in hopes with the new court management system that we can immediately dispose of cases, scan those documents, and we can dispose of them. So going back and revisiting that garage, and everyone sort of chuckling at the amount of files that we have, we can, again, as soon as the case is disposed, as long as there's not a payment plan or anything that we're going to need to revisit, we can immediately scan those files and have them digital as opposed to physical and in our hands. We've also ordered and received 3 laptops, one for the judge, one for myself, and one for the clerk of court. Those have been a tremendous help when the judge goes on conferences, when I go on conferences, or even if the idea comes up that we need to be at home and helping. If the judge has to do a warrant, or if she has to do anything at night over the weekend, she does have access to our court systems. And then lastly, other costs, the $86,000, we've been reimbursed for the court management system. Again, I think the total there was a little over $95,000, and we've received $86,000 back. So bills that have come into us, we've paid them on behalf of the city, and then I've been reimbursed. So it's moving along wonderfully. And then the last little note that I have on there is I did pitch to the Ohio Department of Public Safety to give us an extension on the grant. It was originally supposed to expire in April, and they have granted me now a little bit more time to expend or use the funds until September of next year.
Yeah, and one thing quickly I want to add is with the laptops and now with our cell phones, what I did is I made the warrant process simpler for the detectives. So when I started, what would happen is they would have to drive to my house or wherever I was, and it was ridiculous taking them off the street, and it was a waste of resources. So what we did is we created a portal, and it's going great. So what they do is they'll call or text me and just say, hey, I've got this warrant. They send me the complaint, the probable cause statement, and everything is done over the email. And it's just so efficient, and for them too, because I couldn't live further from the court in the city of Lakewood on the opposite end. And I mean, it was just time consuming for them. And if I wasn't home, they had to wait. So it's working out really well, that process, right?
Mm-hmm.
2024 objectives, we hope to have the case management system implemented and up and running, as well as the text notifications of when hearings are coming up, because we have a lot of no-shows, and we believe with the text messaging, just like you get for your doctor or your prescriptions ready, things like that, that we could do the same for hearings to remind people so that they do appear and we don't have to issue a warrant or continue their cases. And then we are in the process of getting our website updated just to make it more user-friendly and it just reflect our accurate docket, and people can do searches and make payments online. So we're doing a lot. We've been really busy, but we have a long way to go. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is you have our budget worksheet, and I wanted to mention the assigned counsel. I think everyone knows county council increased the assigned counsel fees last year. And that makes a major impact on the budget, so we're grateful for the grant because that really helps alleviate costs that we have to ask for. And I'm not confident the grant is going to cover us through the end of the year. So I just want to make that known, and that's why we requested assigned counsel fees. And we were talking with Jessica. We wanted it to be, we figured closer to 60,000, but we're going to work with them if we need to get there. Right now they schedule it at 50. And the issue is a lot of the cases are straightforward, so it can take an attorney an hour, hour and a half, and it's a couple $100. But we have really complicated cases. You wouldn't think so, but just with the mental health, so many mental health individuals coming through, and the complexities that go with that, and the offenses and homelessness, attorneys are racking up, $1,000 plus bills, and it's just like we were wide-eyed at first, but council doubled the fees, so it was bound to happen. So it's just something you should be aware of. Keep it on your radar. And what is that it? One more slide, I think, or is that it?
No, I think
No,
that's
that was it. All right. That's all we have, and happy to take any questions if time allows or clarifications.
Thank you very much, Judge and Maria. Great presentation. Second year now, or?
Yeah, year two.
Wow.
Year two.
Yeah. Everything looks to be going smoothly. Loving the updates. Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Rader.
Unless the committee does. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Judge Neff, for being here. Very impressive, especially with the technology upgrades. That's something I know you were very committed to, and obviously you've made huge progress. So just hats off. Thank you for all the hard work you and the clerk have done there. Real quick, could we touch base on, I didn't see in your numbers for increased court cases. That is an alarming increase. We're here mostly to talk about the budget, but I am interested in specifically the housing docket or the, I don't know what you call it, the housing docket, and the eviction rates. Have we seen, we were a little bit worried post-pandemic that those rates might increase, and what is the court sort of doing there to, I guess, mitigate, the housing insecurity problem that kind of we're seeing across the region, transpiring as the COVID sort of money is starting to dry up?
Well, the magistrates, I must say, are very good. They really initially start by mediating the case, trying to get the landlord, to agree to give some flexibility. And, they're generous with move-out dates. But we still have a lot of, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how many, but the pay-to-stay legislation has been helpful because a lot of the tenants are able to get money from families or the different agencies in the community, and the landlords have to accept it. And that has worked out really well. So I'm thankful for that legislation because it's just helped people stay in their homes.
Very good. Well, again, very impressed with the court modernization, and maybe we can have a follow-up conversation about some of this housing. So I just want to kind of wrap my hand around it again and get a check-in on where we're at with everything. But just, well done. Budget looks great. You always have a finite amount of resources, but you've also managed to track down a lot of grant funding to make all this come together. So again, very much appreciated.
Maria's working on another grant project, but we'll stay tight-lipped for right now.
Okay, good. Well, more to come. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Judge, thanks for being here. Ms. Russo, thank you also for your good work. you know, I'm kind of echoing Councilman Rader's comments, that it's palpable that you've been really energetically working through a bunch of court operations and public-facing customer service type improvements, and that's really appreciated and welcome. You know, I don't interact with the court all that much, but if it's an easier website and if you have to go pay a fine or something, and that's easier too, then all of those things add up, and I get you with the pleasant environment for working. That's you know, more light. All those things are going to keep improving the climate of work in the court and improve the throughput. And so I think that's what we, from my perspective, I think that's what we need, is just things to work well, for there to be effective interactions with the public, and for the team, as big or as small as it's going to be, to work effectively together. I think I heard you say that you're doing some nice coordination work with the police side of things. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And then could you also repeat, I missed what you said about, was it council increased a fee or something, and the costs of certain things were going up? Could you emphasize that point again?
Yeah, county council, they control the rates for assigned councils for indigent individuals. And it hadn't been adjusted in many, many years, and I think it was it last year? Or
Yeah,
and last year they increased it, and they basically doubled.
Okay, so county council drove
County
that.
council.
City council were observing it, but so, and the point is that that's an increasing expense line to you in the city's municipal court.
Right.
We have to follow it. We have to follow.
We don't have
what-
a choice.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can cap, and I'm thinking about doing that because I know Rocky River did an order capping a case at maybe $1,500, because we've had some where they came through at like $2,500, and I'm like, ooh, I don't know about that. But as long as the attorneys know in advance, we're able to do that. So I think that's something I'll consider for next year.
And is that called out in a particular line in the budget presentation here? Where does the indigent attorney fees
That is,
appear, or is it professional services?
what line is
Yes.
this?
Professional services.
Yeah, it's professional services, legal services, and the amount in there is $50,000, that line.
Okay.
304.
Okay, well, it's good to understand all this, and thanks for tracking it. You know, if there are things that you see in your day-to-day, month-to-month operations that could be improved, you know, speaking for this council member, we welcome the feedback, we welcome the strategic thinking about how the laws and/or the administration of the courts interfaces with the rest of the city government and how we could be effective. I know there's been a fair amount of that on things like rehab, but again, a lot of that's driven at the county level. If there's ever something we can do at the city level, you know, I think it's important dialogue. So, thank you.
If I can, sorry, I don't mean to step on the judge's toes, but to answer your other two questions really quick, the one of how is our interface working with the police department? Real quick, we worked with IT again. We cannot thank them enough, but we've actually taken one of the screens that the detectives use or the police officers use in their vehicles, because they're shatterproof. They're almost like iPads. We've taken one of them that they did not need anymore, and we've actually secured it to the cinder blocks in the holding cell. So what the judge was mentioning about us working with the police department, being able to hear cases in that new hearing room as well as in the courtroom, we connect via Zoom with them, but that screen is turned on. If you ever go down into the jail, there's a, what do you want to call it? More of like a monitoring room where they have all the screens that they can see all the individuals in the jail and so on and so forth, but it's connected to or sits right next to that hearing room. And the judge can then immediately be face-to-face with the defendant or face-to-face with their counsel. So we don't have anybody going into the jail anymore. We don't have anybody going over there to visit. We don't have any officers using their resources bringing the defendant into the courtroom anymore. We have the actual screen. And again, just most recently, the reason I talk about it being shatterproof is because we had a defendant get upset with, I'm not sure his counsel or the judge, but either way, he put the phone on the floor and stepped on it. So then we had to start all over again. So again, that's our inner workings with the police department. Then to answer your other question about having more connection with the website in the city, That website, that new face to the court, is actually going to be mobile friendly. I don't know how many people actually use the Lakewood Municipal Court website, but it's now going to be mobile friendly, which is pretty much what everybody does, right? Their iPads or their phones. So web payments will be easier to be processed. And we actually forgot to mention that the gentleman was born and raised in Lakewood. That's doing it for us. So also good news. Sorry.
Jesus Christ. Thank you very much. I'm going to go to Councilmember Keppel, then Baker. Try to keep it under 5 minutes. Keppel.
Thank you. I just, Judge and Quickers, I just want to say, really commend you on the modernization that you're doing. The technology in particular is music to my ears of using all those resources to provide better customer service and connect with the community is awesome. So kudos. You've done a lot of work in a few short years, so really appreciate that work. I did have a follow-up question to something you said about being able to cap the defenders to have a limit on the case. How does that impact, if there's a limit on, if there's a cap, wouldn't that limit that defendant's representation, or how does that work exactly? Can you just give me
It would not limit their counsel's ability to defend them and work the case, because once they hit the cap, all attorneys can file a motion for extraordinary fees as to why they have to surpass that cap, and that happens all the time. So that would be an option if it was a situation where they reached the cap and they still had some work to do on the case.
I see. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. And again, great presentation, and I really appreciate all the work you're doing, and also appreciate bringing grant funds in. So thank you for being really proactive for the residents of Lakewood.
You're welcome.
Baker.
Thank you. Thank you to Judge Neff and Clerk Russo for presenting tonight. And I want to say, as a former person who appeared before courts, efficiency and moving the docket is supremely important for resources, for people's lives. So justice delayed is justice denied usually. So if you move it along quickly, that's helpful. So I appreciate that. The one thing I was curious about is, Council did appropriate some funds to legal aid for the housing representation for people facing evictions. How has that gone? Because you'll have, right, you're talking about the indigent defense, that's more criminal side, I'm assuming, and then the housing court stuff with the legal aid funds. How has that relationship gone?
It's gone well. Legal aid does appear. I don't see those cases a lot because the magistrates handle the evictions. However, I have a big hearing on Wednesday with legal aid. It would be interesting if anyone wants to, they're trying to vacate the eviction judgment. And it'll be a good hearing. But they're there and they're responsive, and they try to mediate the cases too. It's not like they're just filing papers to clog things up. They really try to resolve. So I would say it's going well.
Thanks, Judge Neff. It's wonderful to see you modernizing the court. I've never been in Lakewood Court, but I'd love to come maybe watch that on Wednesday if I can. But it's wonderful that you're modernizing the procedures in the court. Long overdue. And I know you work hard at it, and you work very hard at creating a fair and just system here in Lakewood, and I appreciate that very much. Thanks for your hard work.
All right. Thank you very much, Judge Maria, for spending time with us tonight, and have a great rest of your week.
All right, thank you. Happy holidays, everyone.
Yes, happy holidays. All right, Public Works, I think we'll start with the lawyers and talk to us about rates. Then we'll get to Director Gordon's and his staff's and Papke's presentation. All right, whenever you're ready, Mr. McMahon.
Well, you're in luck. You won't be hearing much from lawyers tonight. I'm
Oh.
here to help answer questions, but you have the city's rate consultant
Oh, great.
and economic advisors. And Joe Correa from Raff Tellis is here. He's got a PowerPoint ready. I think it'll answer some of the questions that were raised a couple weeks ago, but it'll give a lot of good background information. I'm just here to answer questions. So.
Great, thank you very much.
Joe, are you able to share your screen via Zoom? I just made you.
I definitely can. Let me get it.
Thank you.
Fire
I'm
up.
sorry to catch you off guard. This is the best way for everyone to see you and the presentation at the same time.
Of course. Rearrange a window here.
All right, perfect, we can see it. So whenever you're ready, you can go ahead, Mr. Correa.
You should be seeing my screen. I'm sorry, I did not catch that comment there if that was directed towards me.
Yep, we can see it. So you want to go ahead and start? We're ready.
Okay, terrific. Thank you all very much for letting me be with you here today. I'm just down 71, a little bit of ways in Cincinnati, but staff saved me the trip home and the drive up. So I appreciate that and appreciate your willingness to let me be with you virtually here this evening. And what we're going to talk about here is, our water and sewer rates. Not the most exciting topic, but certainly a very important one. And we're nearing the end of the most recent 5-year rate program. That was kind of the first block as part of the integrated wet weather improvement program. And it's time for a new 5-year period of rate adjustments to be able to support that critical infrastructure. So we're going to talk a little bit about where we've been over the last 5 years. But the bulk of our time will be focused on the next 5-year forecast. What are some of the key cost drivers, things that are affecting our operating expenses, the capital investment, and our overall system cash flows, making sure we're careful to monitor our key financial metrics and keep the enterprises in a good, healthy position. We'll talk about the specific rate recommendations, and we will kind of take a little bit of a look next door at how the city's rates compare to some neighbors and peer utilities. I'll run through this. It hopefully shouldn't take too long. If there are questions, feel free to try to interrupt me, or we'll definitely have some time at the end for question and answer. So the first thing I want to look at are kind of where our water rates have been over the last 5 years. So the important thing to point out is that, with the decision to deploy some of the ARPA funding to help support the enterprise fund, we had an original 5-year rate plan of 5.5% annual rate increases for the water system. The last 2 years, we were able to reduce those down to 4% per year with that ARPA funding and maintain strong financial position for the water enterprise. You can see the water revenues there also presented at a very high level in the graph on the right side of that screen. What's really interesting is that, in 2020, there was a spike there. We did do the rate increase, but the revenue increased more than that, thanks to kind of COVID, maybe a beneficial side effect, created that work from home environment where we saw an increase in revenue on the water system. In future years, as our rates continued to increase, you can see that our revenue was relatively stagnant. And that is kind of indicative of a trend that we're seeing across the industry, and has certainly been true in Lakewood, where customers use less and less water each year with high efficiency appliances, low flow fixtures. A great thing from an environmental standpoint, but something to be aware of as we think about financial planning. And also comes into play when we're going to talk about the sewer rates here in a little bit, and the impervious fee structure and the importance of that as well. But you can see over this time period, our revenues have increased, and there's the note there indicating at about 4.5% per year over this 5-year period. If we look at the sewer, the wastewater enterprise, we can see, a same benefit provided to the rates by the ARPA funding. We were able to come off of what was projected to be 10% annual rate increases on the wastewater system in order to really jumpstart the beginning of the IWIP program. we're able to come off of those rates pretty dramatically down to the 4% per year increase we saw in water. That was also coupled with the introduction of the $2 per month per ERU impervious surface fee. That fee is very important. It helps kind of introduce some revenue stability into the enterprise fund. So as water sales continue to decline, that's a stable piece of revenue that helps support that enterprise. It also helps promote equity because there are customers in the system who may not use a lot of water, parking lots, for example, or convenience stores with a large parking lot. They may not use a lot of water, but they have a large influence on the amount of wet weather that runs off of their property into the system's pipes and causes some of the issues that we're having to invest millions of dollars to kind of fix. And so it's important that that be a part of the way that we recover our revenue. But what you can see on the revenue graph there, you know, revenues have increased by about 6.9% per year over the last 5-year period. So below what our rate increases are again, but we have been slowly, steadily increasing that revenue to support the capital improvements and the increasing cost of providing service. So as we look at our costs, the first part of the equation is really our operating costs. And staff has done a great job since 2019 at keeping operating expenses stable. But as we all feel with our household budgets, you know, inflation is having a very real effect on the costs of goods, the cost of services. And particularly over the last year to 18 months, we're seeing that the costs for operating the systems have increased pretty significantly relative to the few years previous. So we were able to hold things very steady for a few years, but then over the last year, you know, we are seeing a spike in both of those charts, and that's presenting total operating expenses for both the water and the sewer enterprise funds in millions of dollars. The biggest cost on the water side, that's buying water from Cleveland Water. You know, we have to buy that supply to be able to sell it to our customers. That accounts for a major portion of our water expenses and is something a little bit out of our control. You know, one of the major cost drivers on the wastewater system are some of the chemicals and other supplies that are critical to being able to treat the flow going into the plant and make sure it's safe to put back into the environment. All of those things have seen a lot of upward pressure due to inflation and the supply chain pinch during the pandemic as well. And so these are our historical costs, and that obviously informs kind of where we're headed in the future. And going forward, we're going to look on the next slide here at our costs for 2024 over the next 5-year period. The 2024 numbers are based on the proposed budget for the water and sewer enterprises. Beyond that, we have some escalations built into our forecast based on some of those historical trends and as well recognizing the recent inflationary pressures. Overall, it's about a 3 and a 3.5% increase per year. We believe that's hopefully conservative, but we want to plan that way for how we're forecasting out 5 years and hopefully beat those expectations as we move through the plan. The next big piece to kind of our cost puzzle is our debt. We've already borrowed a good bit of money in order to make the investments in the water and sewer system that we have. And so this graph is presenting our existing debt obligations, things that we already have to pay back to make sure that, you know, we're just being good borrowers. What we can see is there's a nice reduction, but it's not going to happen until 2032 is when we see the biggest drop off in some of our existing debt obligations. Fortunately, we'll see on a few slides that some of the capital projects we're working, you know, that is going to present an opportunity to kind of reduce the long-term effects of the capital improvements plan, but we can't count on or we can't wait for that to happen because we have to maintain the pace with the IWIP, make sure we're being, you know, in compliance with what we've told the state that we were going to do. So that's our existing debt service profile for both the water and the sewer systems. Which leads us to kind of the last big piece, which is our capital improvements plan. If we think about the water system, the costs for the water capital improvements are largely driven by kind of maintaining our good cycle of water main replacement and renewal. And so the cost that you're seeing here, it's just about $50 million, are largely aligned with the annual water main replacement program that the city has established. A lot of this work does include sewer lining and additional IWIP projects. So you'll see that these projects, they're going to appear on the next slide when we look at the sewer capital improvement needs, because they're a shared cost. We're doing work for both the water and the sewer systems to kind of improve efficiencies and cost savings. But these are our costs. You can see some pretty large projects over the next 5 years, and maintaining that important cycle of renewing our 100-year-old water system to make sure it can last for another 100 years as we move out into kind of this next century, really. In addition to kind of the big pipe work, you can see there's a note there. We are going to make sure we've got capacity for emergency repairs, taking care of the vehicles out in the fleet, and also making sure we've got money to plan for all this great work. So I mentioned just before the sewer capital improvements program, and you can see the major projects here. The wastewater share of the water main projects are kind of hidden in the middle there. The big things to point out, the CSO 52 storage project, that's the very top line. That's a $25 million project that's going to be construction project that's going to be hitting in 2026, right in the middle of this next rate program. A very important project and part of the IWIP that we need to get completed. The design work is already kind of beginning for that. You can see some of those costs as part of the plan. In addition to this, you can see the Lakewood Interceptor Tunnel there. That was one of those, as you all are well aware, projects that we weren't quite expecting to do that this soon in our forecast. Fortunately, we had the money available and from ARPA that we could use to pay for that, and that was a significant benefit. Without using the ARPA money on that project, the sewer rates would have been pretty significantly higher than what we're going to forecast for the next 5-year period. And we do have also some additional projects in there for emergency repairs, sewer cleaning, additional R&R throughout the system. When we put all those things together and look at the overall picture of the financial plan, what we're going to see is that over the next 5 years, on average, system costs are going to increase by 6.3% per year. And that's starting in 24 and ending at 2028. We can see that the large spike there in 2026. That is driven by that large capital project for the CSO 52 storage. We were making a bigger capital expenditure that year. And we want to be careful. The whole plan is sort of optimized to blend borrowing for our capital projects and using some of the cash that we have available, and you'll see this on the next few slides, to help finance those projects. We want to be balanced in how we fund our capital projects to make sure we keep the enterprises in a healthy and stable position relative to how much debt they have and the revenue they're creating. So the path that we were projecting over the next 5 years, it's the same one that we projected as part of the original IWIP program. We do recommend water and sewer rate increases. We're going to need those to cover the inflationary pressure we're seeing on the operating side, and also to make sure we can continue to invest in the capital projects that we've identified and just reviewed. In addition to increasing the rate, we are proposing to increase the impervious charge. Again, that helps promote equity in the way we recover our revenue on the sewer system. Also helps stabilize our sewer revenue because it's not dependent on the volume of water used. So we're recommending continuing the 4% per year annual rate adjustments for the water and the sewer system, and implementing a $1 increase, which would be effective sort of per month per ERU over the first 3 years of the program on the impervious fee, going from the existing $2 charge to $3, $4, and then $5 and staying there. We'll see comparisons here in just a minute. The existing stormwater or impervious charge that the sewer district charges is more than that $5 that we're kind of building up to. It's higher than that currently, so we're staying below their number, but increasing that as it's an important piece of the puzzle for, again, promoting equity and stability. Some of the details on the water system here, just our big picture cash flow for revenue that we're creating each year. You can see on the top line of that table, increasing year over year based on our estimated increases of 4% per year. Operating costs are growing. That's consistent with the chart you saw earlier. The purchased water from Cleveland is the biggest piece of that puzzle, but then also making sure that we've got allowances for continued inflationary pressure. Our debt service grows by almost 50% over this period as we work through those water main replacement projects. And one thing you'll see, or you may notice there, when we kind of layer that all together, a negative net system cash flow in that table. And what that indicates is that we're going to use intentionally some of the cash reserves that have accumulated in the water enterprise over the last few years to help finance those capital projects that we're making over the next few years. So we're smoothing our rate to balance that investment in our system and leverage kind of the resources we have, still maintaining a strong, healthy financial position at the end of this 5-year period. So don't be too alarmed by those negative numbers there. That is intentional, and we are doing that kind of with awareness of what our financial metrics look like. When we look at the same information for the sewer system, much the same story. We've got revenue increasing based on the 4% per year increases to the rate and the increase to the impervious surface fee. We've got increasing pressure from our operating expenses, and our debt service is increasing even more significantly there because we have larger capital improvement projects to do over the next 5 years. In the same way as we are with water, we're using some of the accumulated cash reserves to support those capital projects, to kind of keep rates at a stable and predictable level over the next 5 years, while managing that balance to make sure we're being aware of the amount of reserves that we have. Now, if we take a look at how a city customer's bill, and you can see it right in the middle of the chart there, compares to our neighbors, we're right in the middle of the pack. This is for a current City of Lakewood bill using 400 cubic feet of water per month. That's a fairly typical amount of water for most customers in the system. In fact, a lot use less water than this. But you can see how our total bill of just over $75 would align with some of our peers there. One thing to note, for sure with Cleveland Heights and Parma, they recover a certain portion of their revenue through the property tax bill, and they use that to pay for their local sewer collection costs. We've made an assumption for that here, and so that's kind of trying to create apples to apples. But some of these other systems, they may use general fund money or other sources to help fund some of their water and sewer work. So it's hard to kind of take this comparison and make judgments. But what we do know is Lakewood's right in the middle of kind of all your neighbors and your peers. As we just focus on the city and the impacts to our customers, taking that same bill of 400 cubic feet per month, you can see $75.63 right now. As we move through our planned increases over the next 5 years, we've got about a $4 per month per year increase to a typical customer's bill. So we would move up to $79.57 next year and so forth. Again, keeping us still in the range of where our peers are. With the work that we do with utilities all across the state, across the country, the typical increase that we have seen for the last 20 years for water and sewer utilities is 5 to 5.5% per year across the board, based on surveying hundreds of utilities and working with hundreds of utilities each year. So the increases that we're forecasting here of 4% per year would be below kind of the sector or industry-wide average for rate increases. So wrapping up here, we need to maintain the IWIP program, and to help support that, we want to continue the inflationary rate increases. It's going to help us pay for those capital projects and make sure we're a little bit on the defensive with the inflationary pressure that's out in the economy right now. We're going to increase that impervious area fee to promote equity and to make sure we're promoting a stable revenue stream. And overall, it's about a $4 per month increase to our residential customers each year. That was my last slide. So thank you very much for the time. Let me be with you here. Certainly open to any questions at this point.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Mr. Bullock.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Mr. Crea. I don't know if you can see us. We see a slide. We saw you for a while there. Appreciate the presentation. And of course, we see somewhere Lou, Mr. McMahon, and then the engineering team. So a couple thoughts. I'd like to dive into these numbers and have the opportunity to fully absorb everything. The slide which showed the stacked net cost to the average citizen is probably the best focusing discipline, because that's what the common sense citizen is going to know. That's their combined water bill from water, sewer, and the impervious surface fee. So that's a good, and that was a helpful compilation. But a couple of comments. First, water conservation. I want to see if we can possibly preserve the price signal for efficiency or strengthen it. And I know that makes the revenue strengthening exercise that we just discussed at length more difficult. But if we balance this from the perspective of the consumer, we want to look out for them too. And so I suspect we have something in the middle, but our rates aren't really designed right now to tell people you should save. I also want to say or observe, water conservation is not just a merely environmental nice to have, but according to your presentation, it's the major inflationary pressure on the water side. So reducing water use system-wide, or even if you just want to measure it from the individual household or business, that'll reduce your risk exposure to cost increases. And that's got to carry over to the sewer side too, doesn't it? Because half of what we plan for on the sewer side is the sanitary sewer, right? So the water that we're buying from Cleveland, which is being more, is going up in price, then goes out the sanitary sewer, and that the volume of that system is going to be affected, right? So the logic should be that we should all have some interest in water conservation, because maybe that's over the next decade plus. Big picture, isn't our sewer system easier to manage if the volumes are under control or going down? I expect Mr. Pappy's going to say, not really, because we only dig up the streets every 30 or 50 years, and less than that if we can get away with it. So you're not doing this on a constant basis. But, can you speak to that a little bit? And then finally, for the law department, for the finance department, or I suppose it's for you, Mr. Crea, the rate study, is it the right financial strategy to have the mix of debt and cash? And how do we know? I think it probably is, but I'd love to unpack that a little bit to think this through. Thanks.
Yeah, those are great questions and excellent observations. On the conservation piece, while it may not seem like it, the city actually has a fairly, what I would grade, conservation-oriented rate structure. So the water and sewer rates are entirely volumetric. So customers pay, well, with the exception of the impervious fee, very much based on exactly what they use. So they are incentivized. If they can control their usage, they can control their bill. Throughout the industry, what we generally see many utilities trying to get to right now is bringing in about 25% of their user charge revenue from a fixed basis. So just a fixed monthly charge.
You said
there's lots of
25%?
infrastructure out there, and that's what that's trying to recover. That limits the customer's ability to control their bill, as you mentioned, and also send that price signal. So, there's not an increasing price for using more water. You will see that in places where water is scarce, out in the West, certainly. But for having a volumetric rate on the water system, especially, that actually does kind of lean more on the conservation-oriented rate structure than other systems that we work with. But you're exactly right, though. 1,000 gallons saved is revenue, or excuse me, cost avoided in buying that water from City of Cleveland. That's a great thing. So the more we can do that does help the water system. The effect isn't quite as great on the sewer side because we have to kind of keep the plant running. We have operators, we have chemicals, we have supplies. It's not as direct of a one-to-one relationship, although there is some, potential savings as flows go down. But the wet weather impact of flows going through the plant, and certainly Mark or Chris can speak better to this than me, does have an effect on the cost of running those systems. So if we can reduce flows, that would kind of definitely have some cost savings. The exact amount would probably need to be analyzed a little bit.
Yeah, that's helpful. So you said 25% is the flat fee, fixed monthly charge median for a lot of other systems. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. So we're actually, that's a great answer. So we're doing quite a lot to keep the price signal. So our conversation with the average citizen is, if you're feeling sticker shock, you can help yourself a lot through water conservation, through low flow and other things. And then that will help for sure on the water side, but the net bill will kind of all be combined anyway on people's bills. So that's a helpful point you're making. I appreciate that. And I guess in theory, what percent of our sewer compliance plan is going towards the stormwater management, the wet weather management? It's probably a lion's share, except for the combined sewer streets. So in some future year, we'll turn the corner on that, and our capital build will go down, and the savings by water volume will be proportionally greater, something like that.
Right. The easy answer on that is the IWIP is an integrated wet weather improvement plan. So the entirety of the plan is going towards wet weather driven. We have other Clean Water Act and regulatory costs that the system has, but that whole plan that's laid out in there is all wet weather driven, and that's the lion's share of the capital.
But it also includes some sanitary separations that will help across the board, right?
Yeah, all those things that are in the plan
Yeah.
are, even if it's the separations or whatever the measures that are in the plan, they're all being driven by complying with the wet weather requirements. But there are other things with renewals, upsizes, responses to emergencies, et cetera, that are outside the plan that we have to spend money on and have to address. But that entire plan is wet weather driven.
Okay, thank you. That's great clarification.
All right, I'll go to Councilmember Keppel, and just for everyone to keep in mind, trying to get planning started at 8 o'clock or as close to 8 as possible. So keep that in mind when asking your questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So, great presentation. Always lots to think about with these water and sewer projects. I just had a question. You mentioned about the equity of the permeable surface fee, and I understand that in terms of, large parking lots and such contributing to runoff, and certainly we also are thinking with our climate action plan hats on too. In terms of equity, though, I have a question. Is there any consideration in these numbers about that permeable surface fee being adjusted per the size of lot per residential customer, or is it staying with the same averaged out pricing that we've been using?
At this point, we're assuming or we're working under, maintaining that all residential customers pay the same charge per month. The majority of lots throughout the city have a pretty consistent, size and household footprint. There's certainly exceptions to that, and there are areas where there's kind of bigger properties, but that opens a whole lot of other doors as we get into different tiers. The way that the sewer district does, they maintain a very robust system of evaluating the impervious surface, giving customers an opportunity to kind of question whether that was measured right or wrong, and did you get this particular sidewalk or not. They go through a lot of administrative cost and process to be able to kind of manage that. At this point, we thought the best course for the city of Lakewood would be to keep it simple and to kind of assess it for residential customers on a flat basis for all customers. But that could be something that we look at for maybe the next program of rates or some point in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we're, necessarily, but when we're looking at costs going up, what'd you say, $4 a month for the next several years, plus the additional costs, and to Councilman Bullock's point, when we can steer people towards their own water preservation, which is, again, also as climate benefits, we can also steer them towards reducing permeable surface on their lawns as being another opportunity for them to control their own costs.
Thank you, Councilmember Keppel. Mr. Rader, then Mr. Baker.
Thank you. I'll keep this brief. And actually, I'll follow on what Vice President Keppel mentioned. I think, might be an idea for the administration moving towards, I forget what year we're planning on hitting that $5, but then it seems like we're holding that $5 flat. Maybe instead of holding it flat, we do 5 for 1 year, 6 the next year, then we use that additional $1 revenue to set up a program and do some type of program where we're giving benefits. And we can certainly learn from the sewer district and others that are doing these sort of environmental friendly and also low income friendly programs. I think that might be something and it gives us a couple of years too as a runway to get to that point. So something that I would just encourage administration to continue to think about. And also, this is great. And I think one thing we want to make sure we leave with people, I think, is that, I support these water rates, but they could have been a lot more had we not done what was appropriate and what the mayor set out from the beginning to do and taking that ARPA money and burying it underground where it needed to go. So I just want to make sure that's one of the messages that we're leaving here with. The one question that I did have was this $34.36 seems to be high, actually, for what we pay for water. And I don't know what portion of that cost, you said it's a large portion, is coming from the city of Cleveland and purchasing that water. I'm just curious how the city of Cleveland decides to set that rate. Is it a pretty stable increase that they charge every year? Is there any negotiating that happens, or are we pretty much just stuck with whatever they give us? Is it fair? What are these other cities doing that seem to be paying less per customer for water?
Yeah, I don't know the specific terms of the agreement with the city in terms of whether there's much room for negotiation there. They are kind of stably have been increasing that steadily over the last few years. They are, that is tied to the increases, I believe, that they pass on to their retail customers. So the city, their city council would have to approve them, and that's kind of their check and balance for making sure that they're running their system the right way. That cost, I can provide you with some additional information. And one of the things, if you look at, slide 14, where we have that comparison with our peer utilities, 3436 is pretty well in line. It is a little bit higher, but you're on the kind of back end of purchasing water wholesale. So certainly, if you would move outside of Northeast Ohio, where there's ample water resources, the cost for that volume of water would be a good bit higher than what you're seeing there. So you do have the advantage of kind of the regional benefit. but that definitely be something we take a closer look at and potentially talk to the city and see if there's any opportunities.
This might be a silly question, and thank you for that, but Cleveland is the only place to buy water from. There's no other option. Are all these other cities buying the water from Cleveland as well?
So on that list of communities, the cities that ring Cleveland Cleveland's the sole supplier. There's no other source. You may recall that Westlake was in big litigation a few years ago trying to see if they could transfer over to buy water, I believe it was from Avon Lake. There is no way for Lakewood at present to get other water. Going back to your previous question, there was, Lakewood looks a little bit higher than, say, Cleveland Heights, which buys water from Cleveland, or Parma. But the city of Cleveland maintains the water lines in those cities. So this is our all-in cost for Lakewood for running our own system and the repairs and things that we are doing. It doesn't necessarily show up in this. It's really hard to get apples-to-apples data for how each community does things. So in some circumstances, the city of Cleveland then does other charges for those repair projects. So this is in the general realm, but our cost listed on the water side here is all in for our utility.
Got it. That makes more sense. Thank you. And is Lakewood, by your understanding, one of the only cities that does it this way, or are there other cities that tend to? So I know that we're a little bit odd in that we're not part of the we're not part of the sewer district whatsoever. A couple of these communities are also not part of the sewer district, but is this strange the way, or not strange, is it just unique?
No, I mean, Lakewood, I think it's a result of maybe 100 years ago, whatever, where Lakewood actually thought about building its own water plant, et cetera, and then made its deal with Cleveland. And there are a number, Cleveland has wholesale customers, and it has, where it does direct billing to a lot of the communities, and they're just out of the water business as a suburban municipality. When you get outside, like Lorraine has its own water system, obviously, and serves suburban communities outside of it. Akron has its own water system. In terms of sewer, there's Lakewood's got its own plants. Rocky River has the 4 communities that each own part of that plant right off Lake Road there. They're not in the sewer district and elected not to be.
Got it. Thank you for that education as usual. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Correa and Mr. McMahon for being here. And, I appreciate, kind of the world in utility. It's from a customer's perspective, you want to have kind of a gradual incline rather than you hit people with like a 20% increase one year and that really shocks the system. So I appreciate the foresight and kind of the planning we're doing here. Digging a little bit more into kind of the long-term capital planning, and this is perhaps kind of outlined in the IWIP, but I want to go through it a little bit, so it looks like the kind of big capital on the sewer side is the 052 and 059, the two CSOs, or storage tanks, I'm sorry. So after those, is it mainly like capital maintenance or is it new projects?
So it's a good question, and you have to take a look at the IWIP, which you all amended when we got our consent decree earlier, and we had set out for ourselves work through 2048. These are the biggest bang for the buck and best projects, and they're some of the most expensive ones. But there is a series of projects to handle other overflows, and measures to control those are outlined in the IWIP. With the consent decree, and part of the benefit of it that we didn't even give ourselves in the plan directly, was that when we get to the end of doing that 059 project in about 2033, we'll complete that and we have to put in an update of the plan where we can schedule then those remaining measures based on what our financial capability and the affordability is then, and what are the costs, and what makes sense in terms of integrating with water projects, et cetera. What new technology may be there that's different from what we identified in 2018. So this reflects, 5 years of rates of a 10-year plan. There is at least 10 years or more after that there are some different ways, for different parts of that, we may do something different than is outlined in the plan.
Thank you. And then the other, and because I think sewer gets a lot of drives the conversation, but I'm also interested, in kind of the water main replacement, the water lines. It's obviously part of kind of our integrated planning. and I'm looking at a map, on some of the, whether it's like ductile pipe or brass pipe and lead on the public side and the private side and kind of what we're doing, and we have a plan, it looks like. But I do know that the bipartisan infrastructure law had a lot of money available specifically for the lead pipe issue. Now some of it's like there's money available from the street to the home, and that's kind of different than what the city owns. Assuming we have a plan, could you kind of or someone from the administration explain kind of where we're at and where we're going with that, and kind of what the next 5 years looks like?
Yeah, thank you. So, we have approximately, I think it's like 99 miles of water main. The typical life that we've been getting is about 100 years. So our plan is always to do about a mile a year of water main replacement, around that ballpark. When it comes to the lead lines, obviously when we're, with our 6-inch cast iron water mains that were put in the 1920s, those all have the lead service connections. So when we're replacing those on the street, we're taking advantage of that, getting rid of those lead service lines and putting in the ductile iron with the copper. When it comes to like looking at, the lead replacement, we're not going to be, doing lead line replacements on a 100-year-old cast iron main. It wouldn't withstand the construction of it. So really, our focus is more or less when we do the water main cast iron replacements, taking care of those lead service lines at that time. And the city is definitely taking advantage of the programs that are out there with the EPA. This past year, we've received funding for that, so we're taking advantage of those programs.
And so those funding opportunities are accounted for in this capital plan?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Then those funding, I'm just trying to make sure that we can understand those funding opportunities are kind of accounted for in our 5-year, 10-year plans as we lay out capital operations, maintenance.
Yeah, I mean, we do our best forecast with, the taking advantage of any grant opportunities that are available.
Okay, thank you.
All right. There's no further questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Correa, Mr. McMahon. It's a very informative presentation and really helped at least me understand the path forward over the next 5 years. So thank you. Director Gordon, you could go ahead or you could put your stuff up, but you can sit there. You don't have to go up to whatever's comfortable for you. We'll go ahead and get your presentation up on the board. And if anybody has any questions during Mr. Gordon's presentation, just alert me. We could go through it that way. So, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everybody. Bear with me. This is year one of me doing this, so don't be too hard on me, please. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So the 2023 pavement condition ratings, the PCR, here in the city, we're looking to have a PCR goal of 80. And currently, right now, the average PCR per segment, and to differentiate, segment is how the streets are broken up. Currently, we're at 80.8, and the average PCR per length is 80.5. So we're right where we want to be. And as the graph shows, about 25% of the city is within very good condition, 45% is within good. About 17% is within fair. About 9% is fair to poor. And about 4% is poor. So you can see a majority of our ratings of the streets is, again, about 70% of it is within good or very good condition. The streets resurfacing cost trends, as you can see, I know we just hit on our last slide talking about the rate increases. You can see how the price increase over the past 3 years has just continued to rise. Resurfacing costs have gone from $31 in 2021 all the way up to $35 this past year. Curbs have gone from $45 in '21 all the way to $60. So you can see, as I've said previously, the cost of concrete continues to rise, and these trends show exactly that. So one point I wanted to get across was, in order to maintain that PCR rating near 80, $2 million per year in capital streets budget is needed, which would include the curbs and aprons. So again, I know we're all into numbers. I'm a numbers guy as well. I wanted, certainly these numbers to get across. You can go to the next one, please. The 2024 crack sealing program. Ironically, I applied for this grant or reimbursement program today. It was due on the 13th of December. So we're going to be applying again for the County Road Preventative Maintenance Reimbursement Program. I have on the slide here, we're going to apply in December of 2023. 3 streets we're going to be hitting on with the crack sealing program. The tentative plan is Madison, Warren, and Riverside. And local streets per pavement condition rating as the time permits. Included within the County Road Preventative Maintenance Reimbursement Program was also for pavement striping. So we're determining those locations and applied for those as well. And this reimbursement program pays for material only, but again, any help is greatly appreciated. 2024 Forestry Department. Our 2024 goals is, again, $160,000 in contractual services. With that, we're hoping to plant an estimated 350 to 400 new trees. Again, this is based on the bids we receive, with an estimated 50 to 75 stump removals, again, based on the bids we receive, removing hazardous trees, and investigating and citing private property tree nuisance issues as needed. And we continue the management of the citywide tree inventory, which is something in Tree Keeper that we just brought in this past year. Fleet maintenance, our 2024 goals continue to replace police cruisers with eco-friendly and fuel-efficient hybrid models, and exploring grant funding for alternative fueled vehicles. We continue to do that on a monthly and weekly basis, looking at all alternatives that are available. And we're going to continue to right-size the fleet by disposing of underutilized vehicles and replacing single-use equipment with multi-use equipment. Again, when we look into the equipment that we have in Public Works, we're trying to determine if it's a single use or if we could use it for multiple different things. A good example was we just bought a snow blower, an aerator, and something else that has an attachment. I have it written down. But again, it was for multi-use. It's not just for one single use. Go to the next one, please. So 2024 Parks and Public Properties. We're going to continue partnering with the Lakewood Board of Recreation to make all athletic fields and courts safe and inviting. We continue in the Parks and Public Properties to explore proactive and cost-effective improvements to our parks, facilities, and pools, and that includes equipment that the employees are using themselves. City crews continue to maintain 17 parks, roughly 57 acres, and an additional 100 acres of green space. So a lot of space. Edwards Field improvements is the field we're looking to improve this upcoming year, and that will include replace infield mix, improve drainage, regrade, install new anchors for bases, and outfield turf upgrade as well. This is eerily similar to what we were doing at Lakefront Field this past fall and spring, so just moving on to Edwards.
Hey, Director, if you could remind me, what's the agreement in terms of cost sharing or responsibility in terms of between us and the Board of Education? This.
So the Board of Education is supplying us with $20,000 each year in capital funding towards the cost of the field upgrades.
So the piece of equipment that I had talked about before that is used within the Parks and Properties Department was a mower deck, an aerator, a dethatcher, and a snowplow, all in one. So again, as we're replacing equipment, we're looking not only in the fleet management, but across all departments for multi-use. Refuse and recycling, we're very excited to announce the new refuse and recycling facility. Phase 1 is nearing completion. That's certainly an exciting time for Mark Papke especially. The new recycling center, renovations to existing truck parking facility, and the new recycling center opening tentatively December 2023 and January 2024. Soon after that, we will begin Phase 2, which is the demolition of the refuse and incinerator structure, the storage yard construction, prepare the building pad, and then Phase 3 is the continuing of the construction. And the plan is to bid in the first quarter of 2024 and complete construction tentatively by the end of 2025. And I just wanted to hit on, we did receive a Cuyahoga grant for $1.5 million and an Ohio EPA grant for $28.7 thousand. Within the Refuse and Recycling Division, in the year-end 2023, Lakewood recycling contamination rate was at 27% as compared to 37% at the start of 2023. So we're continuing to trend down with that, which is a good sign. And we're trying to get continue to get the message across to residents as best we can to really focus on the contamination rate and getting that down as low as possible. So in 2024, we're going to be placing stickers on recycling cans to help educate residents in the proper way to recycle, to enable Lakewood to reach a contamination rate of 20%.
Sorry, Director Gordon. I think that's a fantastic idea. What is the most common item you think that people mistakenly put in their recycle that causes contamination?
I call it wish recycling, where people think something is recyclable and it's not. Styrofoam's a perfect example. Certain recycling bags are not as well. So I call it wish recycling, where people, necessarily think it's recyclable, myself included, and quickly find out that it's not. So we do apply for a grant each year through the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District. This past year, we did receive that grant for $6,000, if I recall the exact amount, and we used it to distribute postcards, letting residents know what can and can't be recycled. And the tentative plan is to apply for that grant again this upcoming year and do the same thing all over again, letting everybody know what is recyclable and what is not. So we continue to work with our GIS coordinator to create a universal public works work order system to increase department efficiency. Again, I'll hit on that at the end. And we're going to be implementing rules and regulations, which we're currently updating for the new drop-off facility to better serve Lakewood residents. So once the facility opens, our hope is to have the rules and regulations updated and ready to go with the new facility. So with the Water, Waste, and Wastewater Department, I know we had hit on this before, and Mr. Baker was asking about, what we have ahead. So right here it explains what water main replacement projects we do have on the horizon. As you can see for 2023, this includes Parkwood, which is an IWIP, Detroit to Madison, Elmwood, and Reveille. And 24 is going to be Glenberry, Mars, and Marlow. You can see with both of these both of these projects, we did apply for OPWC grant and were awarded that grant. In 2025, you can see that it's going to be Northland, which will be an IWIP from Madison to Detroit, then Northland from Delaware to Hilliard and Norton. We did apply for an OPWC grant, and it's under review at this time. So that's pretty much what I have to say about that. The 2024 goals within the department is the addition of 2 sewer employees to be used within multiple roles. Continue to move forward with our backflow prevention program, which was brought down by the EPA, that we're continuing to expand on and continue to develop as we go along. I know Mr. Baker had asked before, we're continuing to work with the EPA regarding lead service line inventory, which is a project that is ongoing currently. Continue to streamline work process and work orders with GIS. So again, we're really trying to tie in all of the different divisions within Public Works into our GIS system. So take that next step with technology. We're ongoing collection system maintenance, continue water loss reduction. I know we had just talked about the different rates. So we do have a water loss reduction, a leak detection that we're using every year, and continue manhole scanning. Wastewater treatment plant. Our 2024 goals there is to complete commissioning the HRT, which we feel is right there. The construction of the aeration tank blower replacement, the design build of the solid storage and various concrete repairs down at the wastewater treatment plant, the HeliClean rag compactor, and incorporation of more functions into the SCADA system. So as we continue to take more and more steps to advance technology, we're also doing it within the wastewater treatment plant as well, which has to do with our SCADA system, which is basically our technology and maintenance system down at the wastewater treatment plant. Also included is aluminum grading upgrades. We found that in certain areas down at the wastewater treatment plant, we need to take the next steps to get that grading fixed and adjusted. And we're going to replace the aging pumps with more efficient pumps as we continue to go along down at the plant. Engineering and construction. As we just hit on with Lou, Joe, and Mark, the IWIP progress. We're in compliance with the interim partial consent decree. The HRT, as I just said, is in the final commissioning completed. The CSO 052, we're design and permitting. That's about a 2-year duration. The Lewis Sewer and pavement improvements, that's a project that's on the horizon this year that will also be included within the IWIP. And the 2023 water main, which was Parkwood, that is currently under construction. Lakewood Park parking lot improvement. So obviously Phase 1 this past year was the nice and beautiful Foster Pool. Phase 2 is the Lakewood Park parking lot. Construction is underway currently. The anticipated completion date is June of 2024. Can you move Sarah's? Major work items. We're going to be adding 38 new parking spots, new walkways, 4 EV charging stations. We're going to be resurfacing the pavement down there. We're going to be burying overhead utility lines, cross pavement, new lighting, new storm sewer, rehabbing the sanitary that's there, and new landscaping as well. So basically, to summarize, Lakewood Park parking lot is going to get a complete makeover. Same design, some additional upgrades, as I said, and additional parking spaces. Lakewood Park, Skate Park Phase 2 is underway, the design build contract. We completed the first round of public input survey. We're currently developing the final concept with the awarded contractor. To finalize the plans is tentatively for January of this upcoming year. Construction hopefully to begin in February and complete by summer, June of 2024. This past year we did an overhead utility study for miles of road. So as you can see in this, I know it's a little hard to read, but you can see that it was phased out into different categories. One of the categories was extreme. The other category was difficult, easy, and not applicable. What we found is that about 40 miles of Lakewood would be categorized as easy in regards to burying utility lines. So we're going to use this data to assist in planning for projects. Again, burying overhead wires in the easy category was currently about 40 miles. And the first project that we're going to start with this is the Lewis Sewer and Pavement Improvement Project.
Director Gordon, where in the, where would we find that in the capital plan or capital improvement?
So in regards to, this has been completed, we did this past year, but where you would find that is that will be included within the Lewis Sewer Project, the cost for the Lewis Sewer Project. To bury the overhead wires and utility lines is already built into the project.
Okay, thank you. So there's none currently for any other lines currently?
No, we're just going to use this data to assist in planning for projects that are upcoming, see how cost-effective it could be, see what the cost would be, and we'll go from there.
So it's more of doing it if you have another project going on to see if you get added on?
Exactly.
Okay.
So this past year, we did do a solar streetlight pilot at Isaac Warren Pocket Park, as well as down at the dog park entrance. I've heard nothing but good things about it. So again, this is something that we're going to consider moving forward. This is also going to be included with the Lewis Sewer and Pavement Improvement Project. Will be basically a pilot for the solar streetlights as well onto a residential street. The Hilliard Road resurfacing and bike lanes, that came to a close over the past few weeks. So again, that was a 2023 construction. Cuyahoga County administered it. The permanent buffered bicycle lane striping and signage is going to be coming in spring of 2024. So currently, I know we've received a lot of questions. The pavement markings that are in place right now are temporary. And again, the permanent pavement markings, the buffered bicycle lanes, things of that nature, signage, will be coming in spring of 2024.
Hey, Director, the buffered bicycle lanes, now, where are those going to be located, and are they buffered by anything physical, or is it striping?
It will be striping. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Director Gordon, would you mind, I think, so this is Councilwoman Keppel coming to you from afar, but I'm having trouble hearing you. I think you're actually being too loud. If you can just scooch back a little bit from the mic when it's coming through the microphone, I think that's what's making it garbled. And I want to hang on your every word, so I really want to hear what you have to say.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, try
Okay, that was too much. So
Can you hear me now?
Yep, that's better. Yep. Thanks.
Got it. Can you please go to the next slide?
Yeah, when you moved away from the mic, I can hear you crystal clear. Yeah, I don't know why.
So the Interceptor Tunnel Rehab Project, we began that this past year. We all know the construction cost is significant. It is the largest project that the city of Lakewood has taken on. We received an OPWC grant for that. 5 of the 12 shafts are completed, and this work will be ongoing in this upcoming year. We've provided a link should you want to receive any details in regards to the process and progress. The Clifton Boulevard and Lake Road, I'm sure, although he may or may not, Sean may hit on it, but that is a project upcoming as well, the Lake Clifton Connector Project. The project is sponsored by the Cuyahoga County Department of Public Works in partnership with the cities of Lakewood and Rocky River. The design was in 2023, construction potentially in 2025, and the Lakewood funding currently in 2023 was $50,000 for water main.
So, real quick, so are they sticking with the roundabout? Is that what, have they made that determination yet? I could save it for planning if that's going to be a planning question.
At this point, yes, there's still, we do need some assistance from the Clifton Park trustees for some easements, but the conversations have been positive at this point.
Cool. All right.
Is that a picture of flowers planted in the middle of that circle in the shape of Lakewood, Ohio logo?
Unfortunately, that is a mini roundabout, so there will be trucks that will have to traverse across it, so it is a hard surface, unfortunately.
So the 2023 GIS and asset management achievements, this is just a quick look at our tree inventory editor and reporting tool. The city is very, very beneficial to have a GIS coordinator in-house. Josh has done an excellent job to create the interceptor construction updates on a public map, created the tree inventory and work order map, expanded the wastewater field applications, and him and I are in the process of initiating the development of Public Works overall work order system moving forward to track whether it's residential complaints, work orders, you name it. We want to have a universal system in place. We expanded the dashboard management analysis, expanded field applications throughout City Hall and across multiple departments. We just continue to expand on the technology that is available as much as we can.
Director, how much of this is public-facing or accessible to the public, if any?
A majority of it, we do make it available, depending on the project and depending on what exactly we have going on. We do post things to the city website. And again, we'll continue to provide as much information and provide as much information to the public as we can. We've really been doing a very good job in the department, I would say, with providing as much public information as we can with the projects that are going on.
Yeah. I know the leaf pickup map has been very helpful.
Yes, and that's something that we continue to develop as we go along, making it real time, things of that nature as best we can. So again, I mean, this is just, as we take the next steps in the department to really advance, I think using the technology that we do have available to our advantage is huge. And this is just a few of the things we hit on, and we will continue to hit on as we move along. Other major projects, Public Works Engineering that we have, the West 117th RTA Bridge Project, the reconstruction of I-90 Hilliard to I-490 is in the planning stages, CSO 59 preliminary planning, Lakewood Park Pier planning and community engagement, Bunce Road rehabilitation, we're starting the preliminary engineering for that. The Clifton and Nicholson outfall, we did receive a $383,000 BRIC grant for that. We had many major emergency projects that we, just a few listed here that we took on as we went along. And then 2023, 20 private development plan reviews and inspections. So in 24, as we go along, the engineering department will continue to manage all public work projects. GIS work order system development, as I just hit on before. So again, we're taking on everything that we get and continue to grind moving forward. So I tried to make that as quick as possible, understanding that you want planning to go at 8 o'clock, so I will take any questions.
No, that was great, and you provided a lot of information very efficiently, and it was very helpful to me. I just have, of course, I have two questions. I'll start with the first, the Hawk signal. Yeah, I know. But so what's the status of that? What are we looking at in 2024?
So we determined a location for it, and we're going to be moving forward with that being put in 2024.
And what's the location?
I knew you were going to ask me that.
Yep.
Right in front of Europe Cafe.
Yeah.
Taste of Europe.
Yeah, it's in front of Taste of Europe. I forgot, that's not Arthur. Is it Arthur? That's what I thought. Yeah, just east of Arthur and Madison.
Great. And the sidewalk program, so have we completed that? Are we looking at doing another round? What's the thought?
So we have completed a 10-year sidewalk program, and we're currently discussing internally the next steps with that. And we should have some updated information for you in the weeks ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to committee members first. Okay. Sorry, Sarah, if you want to go. Sorry, if you have anything. All right, I'll go to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, thanks. So just looking through. Thank you, Director Gordon. That was a lot of good information. I did have a question. So in the capital budget program, the citywide concrete program, you said that's the sidewalk program that you're gonna have more information forthcoming for us. Is that the same line I'm looking at?
That is correct.
Okay. And then, because I know we were talking in terms of the ARPA allocations for ADA, and a lot of the ADA work is going to be interspersed with sort of other projects as we touch upon areas. So I know sidewalk is a big chunk of that. So are you working on kind of pulling out some of those areas like the curb cuts and various other areas that we need to touch upon to know how much of that would be ADA relevant, how much of that is, I don't know, I guess regular sidewalk work?
So we're internally still discussing the next step with the sidewalk program and what direction we're going to go with that. So that would be included within that. Should we choose to take the route of including the ADA work within it, we would certainly take that under consideration. Otherwise, that work would be separate than the sidewalk program.
Okay, so going back to different areas that separately then to do that ADA work.
That is correct.
Okay, great, thank you. And then I noticed there's another line for ADA, a separate line for ADA improvements, including sidewalks, curb ramps, on-street parking and pedestrian signals under the planning public works line on 168 with $150,000 per year. So is that more like, I know that we had a resident put in a request for an accommodation request that we're working on one of the streets for an accessible signal. Is that type of work rather than traditional sidewalk work? Just wondering how that's called out there and what we're thinking with that line.
So if I'm recalling correctly, the $150,000, it would be for ADA compliance in regards to sidewalk work and crosswalks and things of that nature. I'm assuming you're talking about what Councilman Shackner was bringing up. Is that what the Hawk signal?
No, this was on 150th. This is one example, but for a pedestrian signal that it's an existing pedestrian signal, but they were looking for one that had the audio component for folks who are blind, visually impaired.
I'm sorry, I thought you were done. So that we took care of in-house. That we would handle in-house.
Okay. So, but that line item would be for that type of work? Is that the type of work we're talking about?
No, that type of work we would handle in-house. The $150,000 for ADA compliance has to do with crosswalks and ADA ramps and things of that nature.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, Tom?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Director Gordon, Mr. Papke. You guys keep busy, that's for sure. And it's awfully nice to have Hilliard Road paved and nice and no orange barrels and the ability to like see oncoming traffic when you pull into the lane, et cetera. The bike lanes will be also great. So thanks for getting that done. The couple thoughts, curbs. And by the way, on the sidewalk program question, I'm glad that other council members are raising it. I certainly, I live in a zone that came the first or second year, and I can see, it's not terrible, but there are areas that could use the work again. So I do think when we can cycle back around that we need to be doing that. And I hope we'll be finding it less expensive the second pass, et cetera. But that's been a real positive game changer for the community. Curbs, we didn't always do curbs, and with the doubling of the price, I was joking with my colleagues up here, are we using granite or marble to install curbs? I know we're not, but what are we doing now, and would we consider not doing total curb replacement on some streets? Because for many, many years, that's a very recent practice that doesn't predate you by very much, Director Gordon. And that was because or Council President Litton really was working hard to get more done. I certainly applaud that, but if we're talking about doubling, you know, we either have to double the pavement budget or we'd have to have the number of streets we do, and I think the pavement condition rating you opened this presentation with was a good place to be, and we wouldn't want to backslide, you know. So I think that's a valid consideration to balance. Could we do partial curbs? Can we do patch repair on some streets where that's called for? I don't know.
Fully understood. And I would just say that, you know, we explore all options when it comes to that, understanding, you know, the cost efficiency. You know, but I think one of the biggest things that we come across with the general public is if we're going to be on a street, you know, we want to put in the work and not have to come back.
Yeah, that's a fair point, because we're not coming back around for decades.
Correct. It's very intrusive on the residents, and we also try to take into an understanding the integrity of the road and trying to keep the road with the curb and things like that. It assists with the integrity of the road to keep it in the best shape possible for as long as possible.
So you support doing this, and do we think we can afford to keep up with that pavement rating quality where 70% of the paved surface is at the good or excellent rating?
At this time, yes, I do.
Okay.
But I would say that at least within our department, and I would say citywide, we look into the most cost-effective measures possible.
Okay. Well,
and if that includes, you know, down the road, us looking into alternative options, some of the options you listed, we would certainly consider that, and we weigh all those options each year.
Okay, that's good to hear. I mean, you know, I'm certainly not asking us to dial back on quality, but I just, you know, come from a era of, you know, minimalism, and curbs were nice to have, and we couldn't have them for a long time. All right, second point, fleet efforts that you described in one of your slides, maybe we could go back to that, are certainly appreciated. And of course, you've had the pleasure of hearing me get on my soapbox about the fleet work for some years. So thank you for addressing that as part of your presentation. I don't know if could we go back to like slide number 3 or 4 where that fleet slide is. I also know, because Director Gordon, I met the park manager recently in Madison Park, and he discussed how hand tools have begun to be electrified. I think that's very smart when we can do that, because a little hand blower can kick out as much air asthma pollution as a larger vehicle because of the type of engine that's there. So that's all great. I also think when we're exploring grant funding, I was having a sideline here with Councilman Rader. A city should now be able to get tax credits without having to apply for grants, refundable tax credits, even though cities don't file federal taxes. But under the new federal legislation, you can get direct pay equal to the value of 30. It should be 30%, I think. It's 30% for things like solar panels, and I have to double check. It may be like $7,500 for a light-duty vehicle, and I don't know about the medium. Anyway, without having to apply for grants, we should now today be able to access discounted vehicle purchase equipment. I think what we're at the beginning of here is a pretty complex operation, because it's financially complex. It's got to meet the needs. It's complex on the fleet and engineering side in the sense of the vehicle's got to do the job. So I think we're at the beginning. I mean, I'd certainly be happy to partner with the administration or try to find and refer expertise for analysis. Probably what success looks like is we're phasing in a plan over the next 3 years, and we start here and grow into it. But it should be easier to do today than it ever has been, at least for part of our vehicles, and over time we'll get the medium and heavy-duty vehicles too. But I think that's all very much worth our efforts. And to the financial team, I would say the savings come from not only the operating cost of the fuel, but also the reduced maintenance. So so the sticker price is one part, the maintenance is one part, and the fuel is one part. And all of that total cost of ownership is where you'd be able to track and find out, is this vehicle actually saving or not? So.
So with that, you know, we continue to explore all options when it comes to that, and that includes, you know, we would have to invest more money into, one of the things that we've looked at this year and what we've looked at ahead is, we would have to potentially invest more money into employees to get the proper training for the electric vehicles and things like that, because that continues to grow, and we continue to provide the best training we can for the mechanics and things like that. Plus, we also were discussing that, you know, the facility would potentially have to get upgraded potentially to handle the vehicles and things like that. So I guess we fully understand where you're at, and we're all in favor of it. But my best thing right now is we're taking the steps that we can while simultaneously looking at all options that are available.
Yeah, the point I want to invite us to consider, though, is that we're always redoing our facilities because that's just baked in. And I remember one year we had to authorize $250,000 to refurbish a diesel pump because that's just, and nobody thinks a moment about having to do that. So the costs won't necessarily be new increases, it'll just be shifted to the new technology. We're constantly looking at the vehicle garages. They deserve some roofs that don't have holes in it, for example. And, you know, so some of these things are not going to be new expenses. They'll just be an evaluation of how we're using the spending and the maintenance and the facilities planning that are already in the pipeline. And all of that complex moving parts do need to be evaluated. I get that. Some of it will be easy in the near term. Some of it will take a while. But I appreciate us getting started. Thanks.
Sure, and just so you're aware, you know, we have in Public Works taken the next steps. We're in the process of buying an energy-efficient electronic paint sprayer. You know, that's an example. We accepted delivery this year, and we'll deploy 2 all-electric utility carts to be used by park security. We removed 70 fluorescent fixtures and replaced with 45 LED strip lights. We replaced traditional light switches with motion switches. We replaced 40-gallon hot water tanks with tankless hot water heaters. We piloted 4 battery-operated weed whackers, power hedge trimmers, power edgers, powered snow blowers, a mini rototiller, a handheld blower. So I think, you know, when I say that we're making, you know, small progress, you got to figure out a place to start, and I think we've started that, and we'll continue to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, thank you, Director. Hard to believe this is your first presentation. Did you say that? Is that right? Very hard to believe.
Yeah, it's my first one.
Ah, well done. Obviously, you can't pack everything in there. Maybe this is covered in planning, but if it is, skip it because we are short on time. The animal shelter. There's plenty of information in the budget book, but I'm hoping that somebody can touch on the new animal shelter and sort of the progress and plans and per the chair, let's keep it a little bit brief.
So that would be included within the refuse and recycling center in phase 3.
Timeline?
I don't have it in front of me, but I think it was to be completed in 2025.
Yeah, it has to be completed by.
Okay. Completed
Correct.
in 2025. Great. I'm excited about that. I know a lot of our community members are going to love to hear that, so I really appreciate it, and good work.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Gordon, and all your the folks in Public Works. You guys do a great job. One thing, and I asked about this last year, but I'm going to go quick. But do we have like an Excel spreadsheet of our fleet and all of the ages of the vehicles we have, and do we have like an average age of a vehicle in our fleet?
Yeah, so whenever we purchase a new vehicle, we do have an ongoing spreadsheet, and then we also have the year it would need to get replaced. So when we purchase something new, we obviously put it in one column and then the replacement in another column. Then when it comes to the year of replacing the vehicle, if the vehicle is still in good condition, still operating efficiently, we may look into alternative vehicles that we may need to bump up in that spot.
Yeah, I'm just curious if we have an average age of our fleet.
It all depends on the vehicles themselves. I can get back to you on the exact age of the fleet, but it all depends on the vehicles themselves.
Yeah, I'd be happy to take that offline. And then I'd also, you showed a slide with the results of the utility Berry study. I'd love to see that study. I'm assuming it's more than just one slide, if you could send it to council members. And then sidewalks, you know, we've talked about a couple times, sounds like some of my colleagues are interested too. You've talked about how you're going to kind of, the administration is thinking about plans going forward. I just encourage you guys to kind of work with us, you know, so that we can be involved in that planning, because obviously it's one of those things like traffic and speeding that we hear a lot from our constituents about, you know, hey, this is happening, when it's actually happening when they come out and put the paint on. And I know it's a lot of work for your staff, but to Councilman Bullock's point, I think it's really improved quality of life in Lakewood, not just for folks with mobility issues, for seniors, for little kids that ride bikes, for people that push strollers, for kids on scooters, for everything. So it's great work, and I hope we continue to make that investment in time and effort. Lastly, just would like to get it out there. This sounds crazy, but Metro Park started a pilot project where we had volunteers come in and actually separate waste from our parks, and people loved it and signed up for it to reduce contamination in the recycling streams. I can give you the contact information of the person that kind of piloted the program. You'd think that people wouldn't want to do that, but they did, and they got really excited to come. And we kind of created like a system, gave them tents, water. So that's something we might want to pilot with like just our parks, understanding that like, you know, kind of waste collection around the city would be tough to do that with. But I think it might kind of create a model, and there's already a model in place, so I'll talk offline with you about that. Thank you.
I'll just mention if we're going to continue with the sidewalk program, did have some legislation proposed several years ago that we may want to bring up in the Public Works Committee about capping what? Yeah, the corner lot issue. To cap total out-of-pocket expenses for residents. Are there any other questions? Nope. Thank you very much, Director.
Thank you.
Director Leininger, your stuff's already on the board, so. Sure. Yeah.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. So this evening I want to spend, first of all, I don't think I'm going to need a whole hour, so maybe I can hopefully keep us on schedule, maybe you can get us a little bit ahead of schedule, because I know there's one more presentation after me. This evening we're going to run through the department overview. I know a lot of this is rehashing some information you already know about us, but I think it's good to just share that with you all. We can skip a bunch of slides because we already covered that on November 27th, and then we'll talk about where we've been this past year, where we're going in 2024, then answer any questions you may have. So this is our organizational chart, who we are, small but mighty team of right now 8 people. I think the only thing different that from last budget presentation is that Sophia Jones, who I don't think you probably have met yet, because she hasn't had a project come to City Council. She began as a city planner with us several months ago, really filling Dave's position as Dave was, Mr. Boss was promoted up to become the assistant director, filling that position. We'll talk about this in the 2024 budget proposal, but one thing that we are proposing to change is you see kind of our functional areas from administration, federal grants and compliance, housing and community development, then planning, economic development, architectural review, is creating a new core service, which is climate action and resiliency, and bringing along a position with that core service as a result of the adoption of the Climate Action Plan this past year, and creating a sustainability coordinator for the city. And appreciate Mayor George's support in bringing that forward and presenting it to you here this evening. I share this every year, just kind of rehash who we are and what we do, broken across our different functional areas, which there are many, which makes all of our jobs, I think, fun and unique. From our core services and helping support City Council, supporting all our boards and commissions, the whole host of programs that we run, from community development to economic development. We have a lot of federal grant funds that we administer, long-range visioning and planning, to then into our planning exercises, the zoning code, capital improvement projects. We partner quite a bit with our colleagues in Public Works, as Director Gordon has alluded to in his presentation, on a whole host of projects. And then Marty and Dan Wyman, Marty Castelletti running our community development side with the various programs that we have, and that's that end of the spectrum to all the economic development projects that we support. And we have some really great projects that are going on in the community right now with the Board of Education buildings. We're going to start to hear more about that here in the beginning of the new year. Trinity Church is underway. St. James recently completed their first phase. We're working with them on the second phase. A lot of great things that are happening around the city. Oop, wrong way. With the boards and commissions that we support, there are a lot of them. I like to share this just to kind of remind everybody what our reach is through not only Lakewood, but also through the region. So everything on the left are all the boards and commissions, committees, task forces that we represent within the city structure. But then there's a whole host of other programs and organizations that we help support in the region and help represent our community in the region. And there's a lot of exciting work that's happening through all of those organizations. We already had a chance to talk about CDBG and ESG allocations previously. I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions that you may have on these, but I'm going to pass by these slides since we had a chance to go through those a few weeks ago. And we'll start then with the Community Development Division and our highlights from this past year. This will be probably one of the last times. I don't know that it'll be the last time you'll ever see this slide, because we're about to receive around $1 million in additional funds to help support rent-based rental assistance for our renters in our community. But these are, in 2023, we finished all of the pandemic-related assistance that we had received to date, whether it was from the original CARES Act, whether it was from ARPA, whether it was from ERA1, or even some local funds that we put into support our businesses and residents when the pandemic started. The takeaway from this is we were able to put almost $4.7 million back in the community, helping over 3,000 residents and 227 businesses either stay in their homes or keep their lights on, their businesses open during the pandemic. We had a really high success rate with our businesses during this challenging time. So you may see this one more time for that $1 million we have yet to come back in. It's called Home ARP. It's referenced in Fund 242 when we get to the budget discussion. The Community Development Division, as you know from our past conversations, they have a lot of programs that they offer through the community to help income qualified households make improvements to their property, and that's whether you're a renter or whether you're an owner-occupied owner or an owner-occupied resident. And last year we helped 26 units, spending over $315,000 in projects to help making various improvements. And these are some highlights from some past projects. We also then work very closely with Lakewood Alive on a range of projects, but one in particular is the paint the paint program. Last year, Lakewood Alive, through their work, completed 10 paint projects for $27,500, and that's supported through CDBG funds. We also helped invest in workforce or affordable housing with our colleagues at Eden Corporation, or Eden Development. They own some property on Nelson Court and recently took on phase 1. The city had pledged $350,000 in home funds to create 5 affordable housing units. We're working with them on phase 2, which put another $450,000 into phase 2 for a total of 10 new affordable rental units in our community. We also invested $140,000 in storefront renovations, supporting 15 commercial renovations, whether that be facade improvements or that's signs. A lot of last year was actually signs. We had Lakewood Alive, I think, was really kind of pushing the sign portion of the program, and that's where most of our funding went. And that for every dollar that we invested in those projects, we saw a kickback of a little over $4 in private investment in the community, which is a great thing. And we talked a couple meetings ago about our work with the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy and our work in putting together the Affordable Housing Scenario Planning Action Report. that was completed back in May. Shifting over to the Planning and Development Division, again, 23 highlights. We'll start with kind of really our bread and butter, which is our board and commission support, primarily the Planning Commission, ABR, and BZA, Board of Zoning Appeals. This is our kind of flow of applications over the last 11 years. Planning Commission and ABR, they're pretty steady over that time frame. I'm sorry, Planning Commission and BZA are pretty steady. ABR, you notice there's been a little bit of a drop-off since 2021. Some of that is how we have been administering that program, particularly under Dave's leadership, Mr. Boss's leadership, in trying to better utilize the resources of the staff, to better utilize our residents and businesses' time, and still have to follow all the same standards and regulations that are in place, but doing that through administrative process. And so that's why we're seeing a little bit of a change in those applications. And we're continuing to work with ABR to help develop and refine some architectural standards to make it make the process a little bit more transparent and more efficient for our residents and businesses. As far as then projects that we completed in the past year, Director Gordon left, but a big lift between our two departments was the completion of and the renovation of Foster Pool, really to turn it into a facility that was for all ages and all abilities. Staying in Lakewood Park, we were one of the very few communities, there's only 14 of these in the state right now. We were awarded by the American Planning Association, the Ohio chapter, as a great place in Ohio. So that's a huge recognition for this park at the state level. We also completed our ADA transition plan, which we just discussed at a recent council meeting. We completed our climate action plan earlier in the year, which set out 50 actions towards net zero to become as close to net zero as we can possibly get, but also become a more resilient community in the face of changes that are happening in our climate. We also completed a Lakewood Community Health Needs Assessment and the Lakewood Action Plan. And actually this year, what we propped up the Community Health Action Team, the chat, which actually just met today, helping leading the implementation of this plan as it's been adopted. Something that you wouldn't necessarily think falls within the planning department, but something we were proud to take leadership of with the mayor's office, with the law department, the finance department. It was really kind of an all hands on deck as we transitioned the Winterhurst Ice Rink back from a lease-based arrangement where we had a private operator operating that facility, a separate and apart from really the city structure, to now updating that operational model where it's now a city-operated facility and really fulfills the purposes of being a community asset. Right now, we're working to continue to work with that transition, and Assistant Director Boss has really spent a considerable amount of time on this and helping lead that, advance that transition, and also now advance the modernization of the facility with some significant capital improvements that are happening currently, and particularly next year as we start to update the ice plant and think about locker room renovations and create finally some women's locker rooms and ADA improvements within the facility. I think this might be the last thing for 23. Through our traffic calming program, our neighborhood traffic calming program, we installed 19 radar signs, as well as speed tables are currently being installed on 5 additional blocks with Andrews, Elber, Lauderdale, Waterbury, and Wyandotte. And then very recently, through Planning Commission, through City Council, we adopted the accessory dwelling unit ordinance to help create additional housing opportunities in the city of Lakewood. I'm sorry, I do have more. But wait, there's more. Some projects that we're currently working on that are going to be coming to City Council here very soon, and maybe as soon as the next council meeting. The Lakewood Active Transportation Plan and the Safe Streets for All Plan, they're really kind of sisters to each other, siblings to each other. Talking about how do we connect our community through non-vehicular transportation, how do we do that safely along our streets, in our streets perhaps at some point. And so you'll start to see that coming to completion here. Madison Mark Master Plan is another project that's going to be wrapped up here. We're reviewing the final draft right now. You'll probably see that here in January on a city council agenda for adoption. Another exciting project that we're working on is the waterfront access feasibility study, looking at Lakewood Park and how can we think about improving waterfront access, get people not just kind of step back off of the water's edge, but to the water's edge and perhaps even have people have water underneath people's feet or have people's feet in the water. So that's a concept study that we're working on with Smith Group as we speak. And the last one then is the Lake Clifton corridor improvements, which Director Gordon mentioned already. So I'll use this as a little bit of a flyby right now, our coordination with the county and Rocky River on this project. As far as then as our department budget proposal. So overall, when you back out just some citywide salary and benefit adjustments that are happening for all departments, our operating expenditures are generally flat. Certainly, as you go through our different spreadsheets, you're going to see some decreases. Some of them look pretty stark on the percentage column, but we're talking about hundreds of dollars in some cases, and a lot of it sometimes has to do, especially on the CDBG and ESG side, our federal grants. It's just a matter of how those projects are being managed, and they change from year to year. So we'll see that here on some of the slides here. And as I mentioned, we are looking to reclassify an unfilled full-time project specialist position into the climate action and sustainability coordinator position. I put on the slide that it will not be CDBG funded. There may be a small portion of their salary that may be CDBG funded because we do have some CDBG funds that are going to fund a pilot program with replacing lawn care equipment and other small engine equipment for use in lawn care. As we look to 2024, you saw this on the previous slides as far as what our core services are. Really, everything is essentially stayed the same. You'll notice I have it circled. We have added climate action and sustainability as a core service that our department will be leading here moving forward, particularly with that new position. When we look at our planning and zoning core services, really a lot of those projects under planning are continuations of projects that we hope to close out, with the goal of really getting to the thing that's identified in the middle under the zoning area, which is a new unified development ordinance, a new zoning code for the city. As I shared in past budget presentations, our goal is we really kind of had we had a lot of planning actions going on, a lot of planning activity going on. We needed to get past that, so now we can start to write code around a lot of those plans. And purposely, we aren't going to take on a lot of planning actions while we're doing that code, because that code is going to be a significant lift for all of our staff. It's going to be an all hands on deck as it comes to that. We're also going to be looking at our application fees to see if they warrant update, and if they do, we'll bring a proposal to City Council. And we're currently working with ABR and Planning Commission representatives to develop a residential design guidelines for the City of Lakewood. Currently, believe it or not, we do not have anything. We do not have formal standards for residential design in our community. We have a tagline in our code that talks about, and Dave, you always have this, it's harmonious development. Integrated harmonious development that's our residential standards. So it's very vague for someone who's wanting to do business in the city. We're trying to make it a little bit, again, transparent, predictable for our residents and businesses. On the community development, a lot of these are continuing programs. We've talked previously, we're working to renovate 1472 Bell. We are creating that greener property care program, which is that exchange program for small lawn care equipment, supporting that with CDBG funds, so really helping low or income qualified households make that swap out. We're also working to sell some of the properties that we currently own that council has authorized. On the economic development side, a lot of these are the same projects as you've seen on previous example or previous slides. The only new item that you'll see here is going to be the Winterhurst Ice Arena management. For right now, we have that plugged here. That's probably going to become a core service unless it starts to live somewhere else. But for now, we've plugged that in as it could be an economic development, it could be a community development application, it could be a number of different things. But a lot of those projects we expect to start seeing move forward here in 2024. Director Gordon touched upon a number of the capital improvements that are taking place in '24. These are attempting to pull out and highlight those that the Planning and Development Department have a hand in, whether that's ADA improvements, CDBG street resurfacing, even though that's run through Public Works. Dan Wyman, our development officer, spends a considerable amount of time supporting that funding. ODOT excess right-of-way acquisition, working with Councilman Baker to grab that right-of-way from ODOT and reprogram it as green space in our community. So you can kind of see those. I can answer any questions, any of those projects that you see there. As far as the individual line items, I won't spend too much time on each one of these, but these are the various funds that make up the Planning and Development Division. Again, they are staying relatively flat. You'll see there is a little bit of an increase in our travel and transportation budget, and that's a large part. A lot of our conferences and trainings were virtual. A lot of them are stopping virtual options, now going back to in-person. So we need to pick up a little bit of our travel and transportation budget dollars. Also, the Economic Development Program is not filled in at this point. However, this is how we intend, or at least right now, based on what we know today, how we plan to utilize what has historically been around $1 million for economic development programs. We have a whole host of projects that are kind of continuing forward, whether that's working with Bricker and Graydon, used to be Bricker, thank you, Bricker and Eckler, recently transitioned to Bricker and Graydon, picking up the design with Euthenix for the Newman and Madison parking design, assuming we can figure out some of the construction budget. Our Lakewood Alive contract, we have some commitments out there for the Board of Education for their phase 1 moving forward. Paying for the UDO, or the Unified Development Ordinance creation, which won't necessarily all be out of 1 year, but we have to budget for it, or at least encumber all those funds initially. And then you can kind of see some of the other projects that are moving forward, and then some grants that we have coming back in to reseed the account, if you will. So about $700,000 is already committed. Moving over to the CDBG fund, again, very similar to what you saw before. Salaries, we've readjusted some of our salary allocations this year, as we need to do, just to make sure we're compliant with federal regulations. A lot of the deviation that you see just happens from year to year. The big thing that's not in this, you see big decreases in professional services and contractual services. That's because the ADA transition plan is now complete. There's not funding in that account. There is an old NSP. I don't know if this is probably Obama era, maybe the Bush 2 era funds that are sitting there. We're waiting for the state to give us guidance on how we can release those funds, but for now we're simply continuing to hold those in that account. And then what generally will happen is we'll move those funds from NSP over to CDBG at some point when the state allows us. Lakewood Hospital Fund sits within our department. You'll see there's a significant decrease in the amount of expenditure in that account, primarily because we've already completed the grading work. So the work that's, the allocation that's in there is really for legal and economic development consulting services. We also have an environmental consultant that's on the site, has to do monthly monitoring, annual reports to the EPA for the dry cleaning contamination that we remediated from the site. So that's why you see a significant decrease in the amount of expenditure from that account. In the Community Development Division now, the other one? Yeah. So in the Community Development Division, again, this is largely those employees that work directly in the CDBG. So Mr. Wyman, Mr. Castelletti, and then our Home Investment Fund. So the Home Investment Fund includes things like first-time home buyer, owner rehab, rental rehab, new home construction, as well as then that Home ARP Fund that I mentioned earlier that we're going to be receiving. And we may need to do an adjustment on this number here. We were expecting to receive the county funds earlier than what we have. We're just now getting agreements in place. We were expecting there to be a draw that would already happen. That draw has not yet happened, and I doubt it's going to happen by the end of the year. So we'll work with the finance department. We need to make any adjustments on this one. And ESG funds, again, these are those federal funds that are primarily allocated to LCSC for their work in providing the food pantry and homelessness assistance or homelessness prevention assistance, also helping support some salaries here at the city. And so that's us. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right. Thank you, Director Leininger. Any questions from the members of the committee? We'll start with Ms. Keppel, if she has any questions.
I do, thank you.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Thank you, Director Leininger. Informative as always, although I feel like for some reason I feel like we hear from planning a lot despite your small size. So you guys do an awful lot with being a very slim and lean staff. So we appreciate your work.
Thank you.
My question is regarding the waterfront access capital project. I know, when the initial community conversation that was at the Women's Pavilion, and we had the sort of three broad ideas that were presented to the community for feedback. So you mentioned about how that waterfront access, because at that time it felt like what was meant by access was a little undefined. But just now you mentioned like defining that more as actually physically touching the water. So I wonder if you could provide a little bit, where are we with the direction of that feedback from the community and with that project moving forward? And is that the definition that we're moving forward with in terms of waterfront access?
So the original intention with the study was to understand and revisit some concepts that were contemplated as part of the original, or as part of the Lakewood Park Master Plan, which showed a pier coming off of about where the eastern edge of the Solstice Steps are located. And was also then, there was some work done on that in the early to mid 2000s before, unfortunately, the project had to be essentially stopped because we were moving quickly into the Great Recession at that point in time. So the original intent of the project was to pick back up and reevaluate the concept of a pier at Lakewood Park consistent with that master plan and those original development plans that were being put together. As we got into the project, it became a question of, as we were starting to receive feedback, the project started to evolve to, okay, well, maybe we don't necessarily have to get out over the water. Maybe we can just get right up to the water's edge and do some really cool things along the water's edge. There were some examples of, I think this was shown at the meeting you were at, of Sugar Beach in Toronto, for example, where they took and put basically a sand beach, an elevated sand beach right up along the water's edge. Even though you couldn't go and touch it, you were at least at the water's edge and right there a few feet above it. That conversation then started to evolve from continued community feedback, continued internal discussions to, okay, how can we, if there's an opportunity, how can we get people to perhaps go down and touch the water without creating a true swimming beach like we have, or like you see at Edgewater Park or at Huntington in Bay Village. And so that's where our conversations are at right now. There was a concept that showed a pier extending off the eastern end of the park that was going to require approval from homeowners that sit to the east of the park because they have certain rights over the water. We had conversations with them, and they had, while supportive, they had expressed some concerns and I don't mean the word unwillingness in a bad way, just they weren't going to provide, they were going to release their rights for us to extend a pier off the eastern end of the park. And so we've been going through and trying to reevaluate all of those different options to see how can we find a solution that perhaps gets us over the water or gets our feet in the water. But our primary goal was to get at least to the water's edge, over the water, and then if we can do it and we can do it sensibly, perhaps get people's feet in the water.
Okay, thank you. I'm just asking that I think that's a helpful context. I guess I sort of jumped into the middle of that without providing the context to anyone who may not have been been at those meetings. But I'm just looking ahead in the capital plan for the 1.5 million set aside in 2025 and 2026, and just wondering, as we move forward with that, is bringing more traffic to Lakewood Park and what it is we're trying to accomplish and where those plans are. So. Thanks for that, and just keep us informed of how those conversations are going.
Yeah, will do.
Mr. Bullock?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Director Leininger. I echo what my colleague said. You do a lot. You probably maybe do too much. I mean, quite frankly, this is a comment for the leadership in general. Maybe it's a mayoral kind of decision, but I almost wonder sometimes if we make planning department the Swiss Army knife of all creative initiatives, and some of that work ideally would live within public works or police or public safety or wherever, so that we have, not only less strain on the planning department, but also the creative initiatives live within each department. That's the impression I have. Not unique to this year or recent years, but I think just in general, City Hall for a long time. But that's a compliment in disguise. Planning department does great work. I'm glad that the budget proposal includes additional capacity for the major new job of climate action plan compliance. A couple thoughts in no particular order other than following your presentation. On Winterhurst, I'm really glad to see the work. So for a while we had an attempt to get quality at a lower cost because of the private sector investment that seemed to go well for a while, and then in recent years that notably declined in terms of the quality and customer service. So we've taken this new direction where the city is taking direct control over or more direct control over operations, different kind of business model, but we're also, along with that, going to take on more costs. And so we're there's a bit of a pendulum swing. So this is not a planning department question alone, but it does occur to me since we're talking about it here. I know there's some capital expenses that have been budgeted. Those aren't going to be every year. But I must say, I don't know off the top of my head how much of that we face for the next 5 years, and then operationally, whatever staff commitments we've made. I do recall that being a big component years ago when the city went to the private sector model, private sector partnership model. So without taking a long time, are we giving thought to those trade-off considerations and what the longer-term budget affordability is of maintaining and operating Winterhurst?
Certainly, and Mr. Boss, if you have anything to add, you're certainly welcome to. But as far as when we went into this eyes wide open, knowing that there's going to be certain things that the city is now going to be responsible for, and just because the sheet of paper that was the old lease agreement said that the tenant was responsible, it didn't necessarily mean that those things were getting done. So ultimately, the city is going to be responsible for those things anyway, regardless when that lease ended or if someone walked away from a lease at any given point in time. The big change with this, and the thing that I think is proving out right now, at least in the early months of this transition, is that we still had all the risk in the old model, and we didn't have any of the benefit, particularly the financial benefit, to set aside all the community aspect of it. Now we're seeing that financial benefit come into us, in part because we have a great partner in LCI and how they're operating the rink, and they are turning profits each month that we can then put in. They're also investing into the facility at our discretion or at our direction. But you see a lot of that happening now, and so I think we're seeing. We went into that eyes wide open.
So there are some win-wins. It's not all just trade-offs. Mr. Boss, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I think it's so far, knock on wood, it has been a win-win. I think one of the biggest wins is just transparency. I think for the better part of since 2008, I'm not going to do math in public, but we have zero records, financial records of that facility. So we were basically, allowing them to lease a facility with zero visibility on profit, on money that was spent in the facility at all. And so what we're coming to find, and what we found with the 2022 building assessment, is that, yes, there was some initial investment in the facility in 2008, over the summer of 2008, that was made, even though we have no permits on file, no plans on file in terms of those investments and those improvements. We've had to kind of reverse engineer a lot of that stuff now and figure it out. But outside of the lease payments and then us assuming the utilities at a time frame, we have no idea how much money they made, how much money they invested in it.
Yeah.
But it's pretty clear that they didn't invest a whole lot of money in it. But now we have P&L statements every month. I can look at it. We know exactly what the money's being spent on. And then to Director Leininger's part, I mean, there's a lot of improvements and things that have to be made. And I'll give you just an example from the past week. That, just a routine inspection found some significant issues with the emergency exit doors on both the north and south side of the rink. Just another example of something that didn't happen overnight. It's been happening for probably better part of a decade and a half. But all of those doors have to be replaced, and each of them probably run in the range of about $8,000 to $10,000 to replace those. That's not something that Public Works, public property had budgeted for this year. It's not something that they have, a spare $40,000 laying around that we can go to, but I can look at our P&L statement and our projections for December and January and see that, hey, we're projected to be, almost 50, 60 in the black for 2 months in a row. And that's something that we can take that and I can apply it directly to that cost, and we can basically take care of it internally. It's not something that we have to necessarily budget for in 2024, even though we have a very significant budget. I would just say in the next couple of years in terms of capital investment that's required to keep this facility in a contemporary state and make it the premier location that we want it to be for Northeast Ohio, for all ice sports.
That's a very thoughtful answer. Thank you. I anticipate we probably should have follow-up next year when we've got a little bit more runway. I think I join everyone in the community wanting my cake and eating it too. We want the excellence, and here I am asking a cost question. I'm actually really pleased to hear that there's some revenue we're going to generate that can be reinvested there. And at the same time, I also remember Lakewood deciding not to compete with, North Royalton or Strongsville on rec centers, because those are really expensive. But here we've got essentially an ice-related rec center that's going to have its own costs. It's a good discussion. I'm going to quickly run down my laundry list without a lot of Q&A because I'm taking up too much time, but just some quick reactions to the presentation. Safe Streets for All, Complete Streets, that's excellent, excellent, excellent. And I look forward to supporting a Complete Streets ordinance with a funding component so that we can provide capacity to implement with certainty from a colleague of mine that might be on this dais in the coming months. Farmers Market, I think to discuss this in passing, in the past there was an economic development $5,000 stipend, which I think some of my colleagues agreed was on the low end even back in the day. If we can resume that would be fantastic, and I would be willing to personally support it with ARPA dollars. I think that might qualify. Public art, I see we're level setting at 50,000. I'd love to increase that. Maybe we do an infusion of a one-time 2024 shovel-ready some public art projects that get a little more ambitious than our, I think, very successful and wonderful mural program. But there's more than just murals that we could consider if we had more financial capacity. I'd be happy to support that personally as well. Lakewood Hospital site improvement, I hope the RAP and other site improvements, we're not forgetting that. We've got the legislation which can be an informal placeholder, or we could formally act if we wanted. I would say Lakewood Hospital Fund 260 would be the logical and natural source of paying for any such improvements, and it's a tiny cost compared to the other expenditures in that account. So, thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Mr. Brager.
Thank you, and kudos on Winterhurst. I will note, I was there with Tom's kid's birthday party. Tom did not skate, only I did, so either way.
3-year-old.
Not skate well.
Yeah, well, that,
Skated, yeah.
I was holding down the party room.
Quick question, Director Leininger, all the praise, your department, I don't mean to say that quickly, but you guys are great. Question though, I'm loving the code update, kind of what you're digging into there. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Would love to be a partner with your team and a consultant on that. Community vision, that's one thing I think, and I don't know if this comes after the code update, during the code update, if you can jam them together. We have not updated it since 2015. We're getting, and it's still a good document, and I think we did some minor update in 2019 or something like that, where we added in some resiliency task force findings. Just would encourage your department to kind of think about, have you thought about that, or kind of what's your vision there?
So we have had conversations about that. Most communities have a comprehensive plan that they base their new ordinance on. Lakewood, like a lot of Northeast Ohio communities that are fully bid out, for whatever reason, there isn't a comprehensive plan that exists. But we have something like a community vision that kind of spells out our path forward. There were some updates recently. There's a lot in that community vision, probably maybe too much in that community vision. But it is something that we had not discussed an update to it, but rather using it as one of the guiding documents towards the implementation or drafting of a new zoning code. Because it is so broad, there's so much in there for everybody. It does set a good guidebook for how do we craft a code, along with including the ATP, the safe routes, are some of our other plans that we've developed over the years. So we did not plan we weren't planning to do an update to the community vision as part of the code update. It was purely a code update based on the past planning work that's already been done.
Well, I guess I'd be encouraged then going forward, then the next thing potentially is, because I think the code update and the community vision are concentric circles. I think they do serve different functions on the edges, though, that are important. So I just encourage and be happy to support that because I think it's important. That's all. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? No?
Cool.
Thank you very much, Director.
Thank you.
All right. We could wrap up the night with finance. There's a presentation. Yeah.
This is good, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight I have with me Assistant Director Schuster and Eddie. I'm going to kind of pass the baton off midstream to Assistant Director Eddie to kind of go over the income tax section and also Ordinance 2023-36. So, of course, in finance, we have the administrative division. That's what you see us here doing, the accounting, the payroll, purchasing, AP, AR. There's other administrative functions we do. Over at the annex, we're doing the income tax, where our income tax is collected in-house as opposed to some of the larger municipal income tax collection agents like the City of Cleveland with their central collection agency and the regional income tax agency. Also, we handle Vital, where we issue the birth and death certificates. That's also at the annex, as well as utility billing, which is also over at the annex. And kind of on to page 2, it just kind of lists the finance staff. We really haven't changed much in terms of what's budgeted there for 2024 versus last year. And then our integral functions that we do in finance on the next slide is, of course, financial reporting. That's probably one of the very most important things. And of course, the budget development, preparation, income tax collection, which is a huge lifeblood for the city, and our utility bill collection and administration. And the biggest project I'd say we have always during the year is compiling our our annual comprehensive financial report, where we put together all the city's financial statements. It serves as best practice in government accounting, and it also serves as the city's audited financial statement. I know in 2024, for 2023, we'll be implementing a new GASB pronouncement 96, which deals specifically with software subscriptions. So we have to implement that for 2023. So we'll be doing that this next year. It's always a challenge when we have a new GASB pronouncement to implement. It kind of takes care of our software subscriptions, and we have to kind of treat them as sort of capital assets and do it over a few years versus just expense them all in 1 year. The Government Officers Finance Association is kind of our not-for-profit sort of governing agency that takes a look at our annual report each year, and they issue us a certificate when we do a good job putting that together. The next slide, just kind of want to talk about that. Those are kind of two of the criteria we have, is completing the annual report and getting those certificate of completion from the Government Accounting Standards, not from them, but from the Government Finance Officers Association. And then also, as a aside, we did get that Auditor State Award again for 2022. That's always a great thing to have. 2024, you'll see us also implementing and talking more about the competitive bidding thresholds and the internal controls that we have that we'll be implementing for that. In terms of our budget, on the next slide, there's not a whole lot of change between finance and income tax. You can see, though, in professional services, we'll have a rise in 2024. And there's really not a rise, but what's kind of happened is an accounting change with our banking partner, who traditionally, when they provide us with our interest, they kind of deducted their fees there, and we just kind of recorded that that fee net in our interest category, and kind of from here on out, for lack of putting it anywhere else, we put it in professional services for the finance division. On the income tax side, you know, you might see a small drop there in the salaries. We did swap out a part-time position in income tax for one in utilities. And I'd say that's kind of what we have for administration. And I was going to pass it along to Jessica to kind of take over from the income tax part and go over the ordinance.
Thank you. So starting with our mission statement, we've had this since we started collecting tax in-house when we withdrew from RETA back in 2005. Our focus really is excellent customer service. We do have a large rental base, as you're all aware, so sometimes we're playing catch-up to residents moving in and out, so we try to educate and just let them know where their tax dollars are going, because that's always a question that people have for us. We do collect over 55% of the general fund, so it is a small building over there, but we do have a big job. We audit over 30,000 tax returns for Lakewood taxpayers and businesses, and we follow the legislative updates, so this was really important this year, especially at the state level, which we'll get into with the ordinance. Next slide. So we usually just show some of our stats over at the annex. So we prepare and collect taxes at our front counter. Once we implemented our e-file and e-pay system, we did think that maybe we would see a decrease in the number of people that would come to our front counter, but it shows in 23 that people do still like having the option for us to prepare it, or they have questions, you can drop off any information to us, and just being able to come in person and talk to someone. Next one. Oops. So this is our collections, our the income tax revenue that we collected. So through November that we just closed, we have the 30 million there. Our tax rate hasn't changed since the 80s, so we're pretty proud of that we're able to continue to keep the same tax rate and the same tax credit and provide all the essential services that we do here. And then our e-file system. So it's not the number of e-file returns, but the number of payments that we collect through November again. So right now, and still residents are able to pay their quarterly bills. We are working with our software company, hoping to be able to collect other bills, such payment plan bills or monthly bills that are due. But we hear from a lot of our residents that this is a good service that we provide and that it's much easier than having to use the mail or come in and make a payment. And then, so our big change this year is coming from the governor's budget bill, House Bill 33. So these are the changes that were made at the state level that we have to incorporate into our ordinance. And just to go through the bullet points here, it did exempt all minors from income tax, which is already in effect for Lakewood. So in the event the employer does withhold for Lakewood, we do issue refunds. Alternative apportionment for businesses with remote workers. So this came into effect during the work from home era, and it allows for businesses that have remote workers to choose one location instead of having to file a net profit tax return with each location. So we are updating our forms with a box so that we know that that's how they're apportioning their net profits. The net profit, which is the business tax returns, they previously followed the same extension deadline as individuals. They are now receiving a 1-month extension, so they will be due November 15th. From what we heard, it was that preparers were spending a lot of time getting the federal and state tax returns done, and that this gave them extra time to get the local tax return in. The communication to taxpayers is prohibited if a federal extension has been filed. So this is, we follow up with letters after the filing deadline has passed, just as a reminder, or maybe there's a certain reason you haven't filed. And if we can't send that to someone who has filed an extension. So this will, is going to cause us to adjust our follow-up administration. So we'll have to adjust our annual process a little bit. We usually follow the same annual process each year. So we've been aware of this one coming down the line. So we've been talking internally and with the administration here about the best way to go about following up on this one. And the late filing penalties are being reduced and waived for first-time filers beginning with tax year 2023, which would come into effect next year. We've had in place policies of first-time filers waiving, which is again coming back to our educating and letting first-time filers, if they've moved, especially from out of state, there's not too many other states that have municipal income tax, so we run into that. And we do reduce maximum penalties. For late filing, it's $25 per month up to $150. So we have one-time abatements in place already, and then the first-time filer reduction. We'll see a decrease in this in later years because it's just starting with 2023. So 22 and prior would still have the same late filing penalties in place. And that was it.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Division of General Administration's under Finance, right? Okay. So I see here about this expenditure for a consultant for DEI. Can someone expound a little more on that? Page 73 of the budget book. Paragraph above the Excel chart. Just a little, if we could have a little context about, it says, your tenant support, identification, hiring of a consultant to help assist the city, as well as key community partners in the process of embedding racial equity, equality, and inclusion in all facets, functions, services, programs, and policies throughout the Lakewood community.
This is, comes out of the anti-racism task force, so this is where that study has been budgeted, is in this kind of catch-all category.
Okay, so that was a recommendation from the anti-racism
Yes.
task force. Anybody else have questions? Is it on that point or?
No.
Okay. First, I'll go to see if Sarah has any questions, because she's somewhere, ether. Do you have any questions, Ms. Keppel?
I don't. I just want to thank the Finance Department for sticking with us all the way through this and providing us guidance throughout.
Great. Bullock, do you have any questions, comments?
I do. Thanks, Mr. Chair. A couple things on the tax collections and the tax department. First of all, I've always used the window myself, always find it to be pleasant and efficient and well done, so I appreciate that. That tees up the tax software compatibility question. If you're not filing the E1040 Easy, if you are filing 1040 Easy, I suspect you can do it just fine in our city web form. But if you're not, you get complicated very quickly, so I just go to the window. But I know on tax software you can choose Rita. We're not in Rita. How close might we be to being able to interface with TurboTax and all the rest? Wouldn't that be useful for efficiency and ease of collections, which benefit us, right? That's one question. And then the other major point is on the state. Could we go to the slide that summarizes the state bill that changes a couple points? Will one of those hurt our receipts? Alternative apportionment for businesses with remote workers. Businesses, I think, may now elect to apportion net profits to one location instead of each remote location. I recall hearing that the changes benefited Lakewood as a bedroom community where a lot of workers live and now live and work in the COVID and post-COVID era. But if we're going back to the system where so-and-so's office is in a different community and that employer opts to apportion those revenues or profits or salary where the main location is, then our income tax receipts may not look as wonderful as a pretty remarkable increase you showed on the previous slide from 2013 to 2023.
So that's twofold. So the work from home benefited us because that was withholding for the employees. So this would be on the net profit tax return. So I think this would be a year that we'd be able to analyze and see if they're going to file on the net profit side with Lakewood, or if they're a bigger business in Cleveland, if they would choose to file with Cleveland.
So you're saying that I partly misunderstood that affects only some businesses, or it's a new option for any business to choose, and it'll vary by year what they choose?
Right, sorry. It would be if they have the remote workers. So any business that has all their employees located here in Lakewood, they would still file with Lakewood. Or if they're in Cleveland, they would file, and not doing any business in Lakewood, they would still file with Cleveland. If they do any remote work and they're in Cleveland, Lakewood, Rocky River, they can choose to apportion all of their net profits to one of the cities that the employees are working in.
They being the business? like this is a simplification, like a red tape cutting measure or something.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something we'll have to study and see how it goes. But could you go back one more slide? Well, where's it show the tax receipts, income tax receipts here? You know, this is pretty remarkable. So you had through really 2018, you had very slight increases, and then it starts to take off 2019 and following. And so I guess, am I correct in understanding in 2022 and 2023, those are partly resulting from the work from home bump that we've been talking about?
Correct.
So those could be temporarily high, and we could go back down to a 27.5 million.
Well, employers are required to withhold now where the employee's working, so they are supposed to have changed to withholding. So if a person is working from home in Lakewood, they are required to withhold for Lakewood now.
Okay.
So those should hopefully steady out and continue on the same trend and not go back to a lower amount.
So you think the baseline year would be 2023 or 2022?
It should, well, continuing from 22 forward, because the big changes came after COVID. So 2020 and then into 21 is when the laws came into effect for the employers to work from where the or to withhold where the individual is working.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate the insights.
Rader?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. Mr. Bullock actually asked a good question, and it was partially my question. The rest of the House Bill 33, do you see that negatively impacting all the other provisions, or what's the impact on the bottom line, do you think? And you did a nice job summarizing it, too, so thank you for the effort of that.
So I think it's going to change our process and how we collect. So it may be pushing back dates or just changing dates. And so going forward, there might be timing issues. Really, the only one that would affect any revenue would be the reduction in the penalties. But I think we'd see that in later years once all the previous years have expired.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you all for your hard work again this year, another meritorious year, so thanks again. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, and thank you to the Finance Department. As we wrap up, maybe, I guess, our budget process. And I always appreciate all the information we get, the monthly emails. And I just wanted to get this on the record, and I think that's the case, that the changes that are proposed in the ordinance are just what the House bill requires and not anything else?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And then secondly, I discussed it a little bit last year, and, you know, interested to see if we can think about it in the future. And that's mostly just like credit card processing fees versus ACH payments when it comes to like utilities or income taxes, just because, you know, that's a good percent or two we're leaving on the table for kind of, for some customers it might actually be a means to pay, but for a lot of people just to get credit card points. So I would encourage us to think about it, because, you know, in the realm of, you know, $30 million, 2% is another, you know, another street of curbs or something. So I just, but I understand it may change processes that I'm not even thinking about, that may make it more difficult for staff to deal with things. So if you have any comment on that, but I just would encourage you to think about it.
I know during 2023, our big drive was to kind of renegotiate with the credit card processor to lower our fees. So we did that. So no matter what, you know, somehow, whether it's through us or in the future, perhaps through our residents, you know, they'll be paying less in credit card fees. Step two would be probably something we'll start working on in 2024, is kind of looking at, hey, are there ways in certain divisions or certain functions where we want to reduce our overall costs, whether it be in utilities, in income tax, or, you know, across the board, and, you know, buildings, for all of those payments that, you know, people make, they're getting probably some kind of credit card points or benefits, And, yeah, so we'll probably be looking at that in 2024.
Any questions? Nope. All right, so finance nicely bookended the budget hearings, and with that, we're adjourned.